Good afternoon, everybody. If we could have a seat, please, councillors. Welcome to our fourth budget meeting. Thank you to all our broadcasting and media partners who are here to attend and cover our meeting. Welcome everybody who's here in the gallery. Thank you for attending, and everybody at home watching. I'll pass the matter over to Madam Clerk to begin the meeting.
Under agenda item 1, I have a motion by councillors Hupinen and Nero that the agenda for the March 8, 2016 budget meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
Pecuniary interest, Councillor Turco has declared a pecuniary interest with respect to the police presentation as his spouse is employed by police services.
Any other pecuniary interest, council? Seeing none?
Okay, agenda item 2.1 is just the levy impact update. Agenda item 2.2, additional service options for the 2016 budget. Motion by Councillor Shoemaker and Nero that the report of the Commissioner of Finance and Treasurer dated March 8, 2016 concerning additional service options in the amount of $1,045,925 be approved.
Madam Clerk, perhaps we should stop at 2.1 and just see if anybody has any questions on that report. I think the Commissioner of Finance has, do you have something to say?
Just a brief update.
Yeah, okay, so we're back at 2.1, so the Commissioner of Finance will give us an update on 2.1, and then if any councillors have any questions or comments on 2.1, we can make them at this time. Commissioner Schell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To recap the preliminary budget as presented on February 8, 2016, City departments accounted for 1.8% of the 5.23 increase, which reflects maintaining services at the same level as 2015. Incorporating the additional service level options, maintaining services now accounts for 0.51% of the total levy increase. Budget over budget before utilizing levy reduction was surplus in 2015. Our levy increase is under our inflation estimate of 2%, and we're at 1.93%. The levy increase shown is based upon Council approving all the service option recommendations as presented. If a recommendation is not approved as presented, the levy will increase. And also note that the DSAB levy change for 2016 is still outstanding.
Are there any questions on 2.1, the levy impact update? Seeing none, we can move on to 2.2, additional service options 2016 budget. Madam Clerk has already read the motion, so we're going to have some discussion on that motion. Any questions or comments on this, Councillor Shoemaker?
I think I was listed as the either mover or seconder, but I don't agree with one of the recommended cuts in here, so I would want to come off that if the recommendation is to approve them. And, okay. and it's the reduction in EDF funds that I don't think should happen. Okay, so we could, you're a courtesy mover though, Councillor Shoemaker, and would you be comfortable being honored if that was amended to withdraw that reduction? Because yep. I'm not agreeable with that reduction either, so I mean there's going to be some discussion around it. If that one's taken out, I'd be happy to move the resolution.
Thank you. Okay. So Council, do we have any questions on the recommendations made by city staff relating to that report? Councillor Fada?
Just want to make sure that it's clearly understood to everyone that's listening. So the end result of this is that the recommendation then is for a tax increase of 3.94%. Shelley?
So you're back at 2.1%. You're back at 2.1, Councillor Fada. Which is fine. I mean, you can ask a question about that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's understood that right now we are looking at a recommendation of 3.94%. That is correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Fada. If all recommendations are accepted as Council has put forward for service options, we are at 1.93, and including the effect of the levy reduction from surplus in 2015, it's 3.94.
Okay.
Okay, so back to 2.2. I would agree with you, Councillor Shoemaker, that I don't think that this is the time to reduce the EDF. We've already allocated half of our EDF for the next 3 years, which leaves only half the resources if we have opportunities to invest in opportunities. So I'm comfortable with all the remainder of the reductions that were suggested, with the exception of that reduction. If that's the will of council, we could simply amend this motion to approve it with the exception of that one reduction, but that would have to come from the council floor. Yeah, it's your. I mean, you could move the motion, Councillor Shoemaker, as the mover of it. You can move it with the exception of that reduction. Yep. And who's the seconder on that motion? Councillor Romano, and that you're agreeable to that? Seeing no other discussion on the motion, can we have a vote on it? All in favor? Carried. Moved as carried as amended.
Yeah, so I've just added the wording, except the reduction to the EDF fund.
Yeah. All the rest of them are approved.
Okay. Under agenda item 2.3, 2016 applications for financial assistance through the city's financial assistance policy for sustaining and other grants. A motion by Councillors Huppinen and Turco. Resolved that the report of the Manager of Audits and Capital Planning dated March 8, 2016 concerning 2016 applications for financial assistance through the city's financial assistance policy for sustaining and other grants be received and the recommendations on the supporting attachment be approved.
Okay, Council, do we have any questions or comments on this topic? Seeing none, it appears we're ready to vote on the motion. All in favor? Carried. This is fantastic. Did you have your hand up? Okay, we're good. Let's keep moving.
A motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Nero that resolved that City Council now proceed into the Committee of the Whole to consider the following matter referred to it for consideration, 2016 budget deliberations. And under agenda item 2.4, correspondence, there's a comparative taxation and tax competitive document authored by Mike Ward, the Communication and Policy Advisor with the Office of the Mayor.
Yeah, listen, Councillor Nero, you had asked a question a number of weeks back. I had indicated to you as something that I had previously asked of the policy advisor in my office. He had worked on that issue. I had asked him just to crystallize the work he gave to me for council. If anybody had any questions of him, he's here. If you don't have any questions of him, he doesn't need to speak to it. Any questions about the city's tax policy should be directed at the Peter Lipa or Shelley Shell. Any questions about the memo could be directed at Mike because he's the author of the memo. So if we have any questions on the memo, you're welcome to ask them. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Through you, Mayor, I just wanted to say that I thought the memo was very well written. And I just want to commend that we understand that Mike put a lot of hard work into it, so well done.
Thank you. We'll start with Councillor Bruni and then Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ward. First of all, thank you very much for the report. It was very detailed. I was very, very impressed. I guess my question is, our local MPP has said in the past, on many occasions, that the Sault Ste. Marie, our taxes are higher than other municipalities in the comparison. Can you comment on that? I mean, obviously, we are not, but I would like an answer from you. Why would he say that when we have right now in front of us?
Councillor Bruni, I'm just going to, 1 second, Mike. I actually, in advance of the meeting, told Mike that I didn't think it would be appropriate for him to comment on comments that other people had made in the media about our tax rates. I don't want to see Mike comment on things that the MPP has said.
Can he comment on what's the difference in the comparison of what our member of parliament is saying and what his report is saying?
Yeah, he could explain to you the analogies being used. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Bruni. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. I believe some of, as I say in the sort of preamble to the report, municipal taxation in Ontario is a very, very complex topic, and after delving into it, I now appreciate why our tax collector, Mr. Lipa, has such a complicated job. I think some of the confusion around comparative taxation arises from looking at tax rates versus tax amounts. Many who have cited that Sault Ste. Marie has higher taxes will point to the tax rate side of the equation. And as I state in the report, you can only really understand the impact of tax rates when you look at them in conjunction with the tax assessment, the relative level of tax assessment in a community. So just to give you a bit of a parable about how this can be misleading, there's a community called Greenstone, which is a little ways north of us. They have the highest tax rates reported in the study that I've cited for most of the paper. Their mill rate is about 2.5%. But counterintuitively, their residential taxes are the lowest in the survey because their median assessed residential value is only about $50,000. So when you multiply the two together, their average household is paying about $1,300 or $1,400 a year in municipal taxes. Whereas, in our situation, our municipal tax rate is 1.410 for the 2015 year. But because we have a median assessed home value of about $175,000, the typical household's paying closer to $2,800 and change in municipal taxes. So just to sort of conclude that thought, if looking at tax rates alone can sometimes be misleading, you have to consider them as well with the levels of assessment and the differences between assessments in different communities.
In the report, it's out of 12 property types, we have 7 out of 12, the lowest in taxes. For instance, detached bungalow, 2-story home, the senior executive home, etc. But we lack in the industrial side, correct, for the taxes? In the industrial side, commercial side, they're paying more than what they should be.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, I think there's some accuracy in that assessment. Just to be clear, in the study, we're lower in 7 of the 12 categories compared to the major cities in Northern Ontario, so ourselves, North Bay, Sudbury, Thunder Bay, and Timmins. I think I would agree with that assessment that on the commercial and industrial side, as I say in the report, the taxation picture is a little more mixed, whereas it's a bit more positive for some of the residential and multi-residential types. There are a couple of property types the studies examines where we are consistently high. Those include hotels, residual industrial properties, and also shopping centers, I believe, are the third that tend to trend consistently high compared to our peer comparisons.
Thank you. And I guess a question to Mr. Mayor, would this report be sent to our provincial representative?
Nope. This report was for me and my education and my understanding, and I'm giving it.
Can we send it?
I have no intention of sending it. I think it's public now. All of you folks have it, and people can do with it what they wish, but I'm not sending it to anybody's attention, no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ward.
So we have Councillor Christian next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To that point, though, this is good information, and I hope the city uses perhaps our website to post it. It's public knowledge. I think people, since we've talked about this, broached it, I think people should be able to look at the figures on their own.
Yeah, I think it's published now.
Yeah,
Yep.
good. Thank you. Mike, great report. I didn't know the specific numbers, but I understand the arguments being made on both sides before this thing was published, but this clearly shows what we've been saying in council, what the mayor you've been saying, and Mr. Fratesi said before a couple of years ago. So I thank you for that, and it's very factual. There's lots of information, a lot of information to sink your teeth into. I'm looking at residential tax burden in light of socioeconomic considerations. I had a question about the statement, and I'll read it. The median weighted value dwelling in Sault Ste. Marie, in brackets, figures from MPAC, was $175,650 in 2015. This is well below the survey average of $291,497. Are you saying that the average household the average house in Sault Ste. Marie is valued at $175 with the communities that you surveyed? Am I reading that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, in this case, the median figure could be considered, and remember, these figures come from MPAC. This is the midpoint for our residential assessment in the city. So if you picked the household that was at the exact center, half would be below and the other half above. Just for some context around where Sault Ste. Marie sort of ranks on that measure, I noted we're well below the survey average of not quite 300,000. We actually rank 11th lowest in the survey, so 11th out of 104 participating municipalities.
My apologies, it does say median. Wrong choice of words. I do like the point, though, that you make underneath that, which I think is important, because I know that people who see this have some people have a common complaint, and I think this comment hits on it. Additionally, it is also suggested by demographic trends in Sault Ste. Marie, including a higher median age and lower labor force participation rate, that the citizenry's ability to pay is more constrained than in other like municipalities. And I just want to state that that's not lost on council, that we like the fact that we are one of the lowest taxed communities in Northern Ontario, but this council recognizes that the ability of the average resident in Sault Ste. Marie is constrained, and it's not lost on this council. So again, I thank you for that. My final comment is, again, this, like I tell people, if you own a $400,000 home in Barrie in Mississauga, you're lucky if you have a bungalow. If you have a $400,000 house in Sault Ste. Marie, you have a nice residence. So therein lies this playing of figures where, we say we pay higher per 100,000 of assessment. That's where the problem is that we get a lot more house for the amount of money that others are spending to get bungalows in Southern Ontario. So thank you very much for the report.
Councillor Romano?
Excuse me, sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ward. Just further to Councillor Christian's comments just made, that is specifically the reason why, I don't want to quote the whole portion, but that last segment of Councillor Christian's comments, that is specifically the reason why in Sault Ste. Marie, we really want to look at basing our taxes on every $100,000 tax assessment, municipal assessment, sorry. Is that a fair comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Romano. I believe probably the best measure for describing the municipal tax burden in Sault Ste. Marie would probably focus more so on amounts than rates or rates per 100,000 of assessment, particularly if you're looking to establish comparisons with other municipalities. I think, as Councillor Christian alluded to, the difficulty is, here in Sault Ste. Marie, $100,000 of assessment is different than $100,000 worth of assessment in Oakville. And even amongst cities that we consider closer to our peers like Sudbury, Thunder Bay, North Bay, there can still be differences between us. And even if it's, 5, 10, 15%, that becomes significant when you start to calculate, I guess you would say, the average burden per household or the average burden per taxpayer. The use of metrics like the per $100,000 of assessment, there's probably some use for tracking our own trend over time. But when trying to compare us against like municipalities, it becomes a bit of a complex situation, because under Ontario's current value assessment system, which is a market-based system, you are going to end up with big discrepancies amongst, what homes are valuated at from city to city.
So maybe just for my own purposes and those watching at home, it depends on what lens you view the tax situation through. If you determine it based on, per square foot or per $100,000 assessment value, you're going to come up with a different number in terms, or a different comparison.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Romano, it's been suggested to me, and I've been fortunate enough to seek out the help from some experts in public finance about this, that a wide variety of metrics be considered when you're trying to make these sorts of evaluations. So for residents, you would want to look at the amounts they're paying. You would want to look at the amount as a percentage of their household income. For business and industry, you want to look at the tax ratios. You want to look at the amounts per square foot or the amounts per acre of serviced land. So I think it's very difficult to arrive at, I guess, definitive conclusions, and hence I'm going to stay away from saying we're the best in the north or the worst in the north or among the best, but focus more so on just are we sort of competitive generally. But I think the discussion for council is to look at a number of different comparisons and sort of broaden the conversation as much as possible.
And I guess that's what I'm trying to gather here. Given that you've got all these different lenses that you can review these circumstances through, for our circumstances, the recommendation is that we look at assessment per $100,000.
Councillor Mano, Mr. Ward isn't making any recommendations. This was simply like he's not making any recommendations. The recommendations would have to come from Mr. Leap or Ms. Schell. He just did, an academic assessment of these rates.
Okay, I appreciate that. I thought that was the summary of the findings of the reports that we've got. So perhaps I could direct that at Mr. Lipa then?
Sure, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Lipa, is that not a fair categorization that what we should view as, the lens we should review our tax situation through is per $100,000 taxes, municipal assessment value?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Romano, I'll piggyback on Councillor Christian's comment. In the past, we've used that analogy as far as per 100,000 of assessment. But again, I mean, a $1 million house in Toronto is not like $1 million house here. I mean, you're lucky if you get a bungalow in Toronto. So we don't use that as a comparator. So we try to look at what are the other, especially Northern Ontario municipalities, as far as their tax ratios and rates and what they're using. And again, a lot of it has to come back to, the amount of assessment or what they carry in their large industrial or commercial classes. So how it would affect the residential sector.
Councillor Mann, I don't know if this is helpful, but, I've been considering this now for a number of months, and the conclusion I drew is that we can't look at one singular item as the comparator. Like, these are very contextual approaches. And if you just take a step back and look at this, the city of Sault Ste. Marie doesn't levy land transfer tax like the city of Toronto does. The city of Sault Ste. Marie also doesn't have development charges like the city of Sudbury does and the city of North Bay does. So we have less revenue generating tools. Our only revenue generating tool really of any substance is our realty tax. So you're comparing, like when you compare our taxes to other communities' taxes, they might have a lower realty tax, but when you buy a house in the city of Toronto, you're paying land transfer tax. When you go to develop something in the city of Sudbury and the city of North Bay, you're paying those development charges. Those are all revenue generating tools. So it's really hard to compare our taxes to other communities. The conclusion I drew, using one singular lens. You have to do one of these contextual approaches and look at a number of different angles and then see if over a number of different angles you're relatively similar or in the same median or mean as the other communities.
And I guess that therein lies the problem, is that we're looking at how do we compare ourselves to other municipalities, and we've got to look through all these different lenses. And so, what's the best look for us? And I have your position, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
so that's all I'm trying to get.
Yeah,
my appreciation of Mr. Ward's report, and I'm not in any way being critical, and of the BAB report received was or reviewed was that sort of per $100,000 assessment value was the best sort of categorization for us. So I was just trying to flesh that out.
Probably the simplest. Councillor Butland?
Yes. I thought this was very straightforward till council got it. Now it's more convoluted maybe than I thought. Maybe it's just me. It's a great report. I've wrestled with the BMA report. I know Michelle will acknowledge that for 4 or 5 years, and I go through it and have stickies all over the place, and by the end of it I said, gee, I don't know. there's a good news, bad news. I really do believe, compared to other municipalities, we're rated 7 out of 12 residential, amongst the lowest in Ontario. The bad news is our industrial commercial is just about higher than everybody else's. And at first I said, well, maybe it's the chamber posturing and saying you have to do something about this. Well, that is not the case. And talking to our EDC people, they say, yeah, when people are coming to the school, they say, well, what will my tax rate be? Ooh, that's high. So residents, we're doing very well. Industrial, commercial, not so well. So that is something we need to deal with. However we deal with it, I'm just not sure. But we have to lower those rates. Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. Only 8 communities all in all of Ontario have no development fees. I just don't know. Anybody over there, could they evaluate the impact of not having development fees? Michelle, yes or no? That's, yeah, I think that's very difficult to evaluate. But thank you very much for the report. Very, very helpful.
Are you one more comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for indulging me here. I agree with Councillor Buttlin. I was remiss without mentioning the Chamber's report and the struggles for our industrial base and commercial base. It is a struggle. We got to recognize it. Although this is a good report for our residences, it's not good for commercial, and I think it lends itself to the discussions we had last night. And so I'm glad he brought that up. I just want to make one comment, and it gets back to Councillor Romano's point about the $100,000 worth of an assessment. The only thing I would offer is that's an effective tool, I think, but I think it's something we need to use internally. We could use that for trend analysis. So in other words, this is how much each resident is paying in $100,000 worth of assessment in Sault Ste. Marie today, and we can trend over time. Are the services that we're providing per household cost keeping pace with property assessment? And I think that's an internal exercise that we can use for trend analysis over time. So I think that serves a purpose. Thank you.
Okay, well, listen, Council, like I said, it was a memo that I had at my disposal, and I thought it appropriate that, I share the information with you as a whole so we could function from the same place. It seems to me that we can acknowledge that, our residential is in an area that we could argue is competitive with other communities, but we do need to, over time, look at a tax policy that addresses our commercial industrial. And this is the beginning of the process, and nothing's going to happen overnight, but I think we need to start working towards that end. So thanks for coming tonight, Mike. You can go home, and we can move on. Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 2.5, preliminary budget outside agencies and grants to others. That's just the summary of grants to outside agencies year to year, and probably about the first 2/3 of that list is what you're discussing tonight. So agenda item 2.6 is the Sault Ste. Marie Public Library, and Roxanne Racinen, the Director of Public Libraries, is in attendance.
Roxanne, before you get up, does anybody have any questions on 2.5 before we move to 2.6? So seeing no questions in 2.5, welcome. Thank you for attending tonight.
I was a little bit too excited to get up here.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to have the opportunity to share with you how the Library Board and I have been working diligently to be able to provide the services that the library offers to our community and maintain the level of funding that we have. So going through, I apologize. I'm so sorry. I didn't put in.
We have a presentation here.
Yes.
Okay.
I gave him my stick and I wasn't.
Oh, don't apologize.
So.
We
Okay, so what we have here is we have the budget summary for comparing 2015 and 2016. As you will notice from your printout, our provincial grants have dropped this year. It was in 2015 we had $25,000. This year we're looking at $3,104, and that's just a change in the ministry funding with regards to grants that they provide. One of the other changes that you will note is that was from our revenue, from our expenditures. We did add an additional, I did add an additional $6,000 for our training and travel in order to provide opportunities for our staff to build capacity to offer a higher level of service to our community. Some of the items that we have no control over are, of course, staffing costs, our operating expenses, which include costs for heat, hydro, our elevator maintenance, our printing maintenance as well. That's from the budget summary. You'll notice on the next page, we have our 5-year expenditure trend. Starting in 2010, what we had in 2009 and 2010, we had 4 retirements in a 1-year period of time. And beginning in 2011, we replaced those positions. So that's the reason there was such a big jump between 2010 and 2011 in staffing and benefits. So going forward into the efficiencies, in 2015, there has been the library board and I committed to restructuring the management team. We realized that there were several retirements coming up in different departments, and we've restructured the management team to take advantage of those, realigning jobs to make sure that we can provide opportunities for our community, but also realize savings within the organization. Last year, the library developed a line of signature events. We had our first event, and that was the paint night. It was very successful for us. This month, we're offering our second signature event, and that is a local artist. We have a wine and cheese event that's happening at the Centennial Library. At the end of 2015, what we started was an Adopt a Magazine. This will be an annual program for the library to provide revenue and provide magazine subscriptions to our community. The library realized $2,300 in profit towards purchasing magazines for our community. And as you are aware, in 2015, the chiller replacement project was completed at the Centennial Library. And as a result of having this 50-year-old mechanism replaced, we will see energy cost savings going into the future. Our service level options, the library, myself and the library board will be presenting this right after the budget presentation. So going through the administration operating budget, we have the municipal grant, our operating grant, which includes the public library operating grant from the ministry, and also the pay equity grant we receive. That maintains stable, that's been stable for the last 5 years. The summer experience grant, that's stable. Our contracting communities remain the same because they provide us with their public operating grant, which is the same for them as well. The expenditures for the administration, we have had a slight decrease in the salaries because of the fact we had a change in positions. We had new people coming in, and that saved us funds from that. The reason that the benefits, even though we saw savings in the savings for the salaries, is that in 2015, our benefits that we had provided in our 2015 budget presentation were not at the level they should have been at the start of 2015. And then in the Centennial Library, you'll notice there is a drop in our salaries as well, again, from a retirement. The increase in the benefits, again, is due to the fact that the 2015 budget, the benefits were not at the level they should be. They should have been, sorry. And then Cora Branch, I know one thing you'll notice is that the equipment purchases for Cora Branch are at zero, and they have been at zero because of the fact that branch just opened in 2012. We haven't been required to purchase any additional equipment for that location. Going forward in the future, it may be that we are required to purchase equipment purchases. And then our last cost center, Churchill Branch Library. We do have savings in books and periodicals for that location. Again, with the cost increase for regular increase for salaries, the percentage increase, benefits went up. The operating costs for that location include the rent that we pay for that space. And that has gone up, part of it, over 2015. So going forward in 2016, we did have to adjust that. And then just looking at our revenue that we can expect from our concession food and expenditures has remained the same.
So we have questions on this report. Councillor Shoemaker and then Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, welcome. You had mentioned in one of these slides on page 6 of 10, I'm not sure what that is here, Public Library 2016 operating budget, cost centers, administration. You've got a number in here for contracting communities.
Yes.
What communities are they?
They are Weirs, Gooley, Searchmont. Sorry, I have the list right here. Sorry. Weirs, Gooley District, Laird Township, McDonald, Meredith, and Aberdeen, Searchmont, and Tarbet Additional.
And what percentage of our budget does that 22,965 work out to?
It works out to 0.7% of our overall operating budget that they provide to us.
0.7%?
Yes, 0.7%, sorry.
And do you know what percentage of circulation they use?
Last year, the contracting communities checked out 23,000 items, so it works out to just about 7% of our overall collection. So they are circulating 7% of our collection.
7.0%?
Yes, 7.0%, yes.
It seems to me that if they're using 7% and only paying 0.7%, that means we as Sault Ste. Marie taxpayers are subsidizing the surrounding communities to use our libraries. So that, at the very least, seems like an issue that should be rectified, which would bring us in more money.
We are one of the only larger libraries in Northern Ontario that still do offer contracting community, have that service. Now, back in 1984, the Public Libraries Act instituted that municipalities could contract out. Instead of each municipality having to have their own public library board, the municipality itself could contract this service out. Other communities, North Bay has communities around them that are the same size as our communities that have decided to have their own public library. Now, I will share some of the public library operating grants that these communities receive are very, very small.
Has your board had a discussion about that point?
We have not, so that is something that we would have to discuss and bring back to council.
if a request by way of resolution for them to bring that back to us after discussing it is necessary, I'd be happy to move that if it's just understood that it sort of will be done.
I expect that it's understood that council would be looking for some feedback on that discussion. I don't think a motion would be necessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that it,
That's
Councillor
it.
Shoemaker?
That's it. Yeah.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
Through the mayor, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Just a few questions.
Sure.
Demographically, do you have a breakdown who uses our libraries? And possibly, do you have a breakdown for the Churchill Plaza Library demographically?
We would have to get that information, but I could get you that information.
Okay.
I don't have it with me.
Okay, that'd be helpful. And another question, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Councillor Myers made a suggestion about possibly looking at your rent and looking at some other solutions. And I believe the solution she may have suggested was going to Wellington Square Mall or something like that, because the landlord was going to offer a much reduced rate. Do you have an update on that?
From you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor, I'm sorry.
Hollingsworth.
I apologize. I'm sincerely sorry.
No worries.
We did look into that, and they were considerably higher. There was 3 locations that came that responded to Councillor Myers, and they were more expensive. What we're being provided now is at $20 per square foot, and those other locations were considerably higher. Because of the fact, part of it was there would be a cost for renovating the location, and that would be put in as part of the rent.
Okay. And thank you. And just one last comment. Libraries are going through a transformation. I know you're very aware of that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your board is also looking at other ways to go through a transformation. Some people may want to argue that today's library or yesterday's library is going to look very different in the future. Are you able to give us 1 or 2 comments on some of the trends?
I would love to. When I started at this library in 2005, the library offered 1,059 programs. Last year, we offered only 31 more programs, so 1,090. In 2005, we had 5,400 people attend programs. Last year, we had almost 20,000 people attend our programs. So libraries are changing. Libraries are public spaces. Libraries are the community's living room. People come to the library for a vast amount of resources. We're part of the economic development. We have a new startup company that actually has rented our program room to build their clientele. We get contacted by outside organizations that are trying to reach their clientele. We have one community organization that is offering resume writing and interview skills through the library because they know that's where their clients are. They know the families come here. We just opened on Family Day and we had over 300 people through the doors. It's just a place where people go to, they share their ideas, they build their literacy skills. Like one thing I had shared was we have waiting lists for our baby Picasso. We have them 6-week-long, 4-week-long programs and their waiting lists. That builds not only literacy, but it also builds a sense of community for our children. When they have these experiences in our community, they stay. You know, they might be able to find different works. With the programs that the library offers, we can help build that entrepreneurial spirit that we're looking for people to stay here, make a life for themselves, improve their life here in our city.
Okay, thank you. And just one last comment. Yes, I think it would be very helpful if we did have a breakdown, if I may request that, if you could do it per location. Yeah. And it could be my eyes, but I don't know if I saw anything in the report that shows basically how many people are walking into your libraries.
We do.
I'd like to see basically a volume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Last year we did have 365,000 people through the door, but I can bring that back.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hoopanen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Roxanne. Hi, Roxanne. Thank you so much for the report. Much appreciated. I just have one question, and it's just regarding the operating budget on the Cora branch and the Churchill branch. It gives you the total of part-time hours, but can you translate that to me in people?
Sure. At both locations, it works out to a total of 6 part-time staff members. At both locations, we have 3 part-time clerks, and we also have 3 adult pages.
Good. That's my easy question for you, Roxanne. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, we have Councillor, I was just looking ahead, and I was actually thinking the police chief is probably going to be the one of the longest presentations. He's next, so I'm going to get some of these other people out of the gallery before the police chief starts. Sorry, Chief. Councillor Bruni.
Training has been increased by 47%. Explanation why?
Sure. From you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, I'm more than glad to share that with you. What we have done is the board and I have placed value on creating capacity with our staff. We see what other organizations, what other public libraries are offering in Southern Ontario. Now, not only are we actually attending programs, we're actually presenting at conferences. In February, we had 3 of our staff members present about our Pumpkin Festival, the Gourds versus Goliaths program. If Council will remember, the year before last, the library did win the Minister's Award for Excellence for our Polar Express train program. So with library conferences, when you have staff presenting, we still have to pay for staff to be able to fly to those conferences for their accommodations. We do get the day paid for attending the conference, but they don't pay for us to actually present and fly down there. So that is part of the expense.
Okay, thank you. And the operating increase of 18% for the Churchill Plaza Library. Do we have a lease? How long is the lease there?
From you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, what we're on right now is a month-to-month lease. We've actually been on a month-to-month lease since July of last year. What happened in 2015, at the end of 2014, we were told that our rent would stay the same, and there was a little bit of increase.
So there's no negotiating?
From you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, they have provided us with the best that they are able to do.
18% is a little bit high. I mean, if it went up 2%, I can understand, but 18%.
And now that does include the costs for not only the rent, but also heat, hydro, because we do pay heat and hydro at that location as well.
And also, maybe just clarify regarding the benefits. I noticed the benefit cost is really escalated.
Yes, so what happened when we were preparing the budget for 2015, we failed to put in the proper amount for the benefits. So that's just correcting a mistake that we made in 2015.
Now, you work with our HR department?
Yes.
Before this?
Yes.
You do? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bruno. Councillor Romano?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. What is, I'm looking at just the total budget summary. What is the total number of full-time and part-time staff
From
for
you,
all 3 locations?
For all 3 locations. From you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Romano, sorry. We have a total of 58 full-time and part-time staff members at the library.
Did you say 58?
58.
Okay, and how many of those are full-time?
There is 22 full-time.
22 full-time, okay. And looking again at the budget summary, operating expenses, I trust, has included within it all of our energy costs?
Yes.
Do you have that number offhand, just what that particularly is out of those operating expenses?
No, I don't. I apologize about that. But I can bring that back.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it, Councillor Romano? So we have Councillor Fata next, and then Councillor Christian.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to, maybe this may be not the right time to bring it up, but I would like to make reference to my resolution. I'm just wondering at what point can we entertain that?
Yeah, so Councillor Fata sent a resolution today to reduce the budgets of all outside agencies by 5%. I thought
Up to 5%.
Up to 5%. So I thought the best time to debate that motion or discuss that motion would be after we heard from everybody. You know, it seemed reasonable that, in my approach, that we'd hear from everybody, and that's a broad discussion you're asking us to have. You're in the right to ask us to have it as a councillor, so we'll have that discussion, but I think we should have it at the very end.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to go through each of the agencies, and we're going to vote on it, I guess, as each one is over. Are we going to vote and say we accept that?
No. No.
So we're not going to be accepting anything tonight, then?
No.
Nothing that's being presented is being accepted, Mr. Mayor.
No, they're presenting their information, we're hearing from them, we're asking them questions, and then it goes into our broader budget deliberations. We will have a discussion about your motion. We'll, I expect, have to, if there's a straw poll and there's no support for your motion, we won't vote for it when we get back to out of committee of the whole. If it's kind of evenly divided and I can't tell where it's going to go, we'll have a vote outside. And we'll have that discussion. But no, we're hearing, they made their submissions to the city, and we're hearing about them, but we won't be affirming their budgets tonight by any means.
What I will, yeah.
Differences with the library board too, and the police service board, as you know, we can ask the staff about some of the technical issues, but I don't want to get there yet. Are you satisfied with dealing with your motion at the end, Councillor Fata?
Yeah, if I may just ask.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, one item that I'm concerned with is this discussion that's obviously taking place about the Churchill Branch Library is currently month to month, and you're saying here very clearly that you're looking at possibly changing locations, but you want to maintain the current level of funding. Now, I have a problem with that. Part of my feelings on this item here, namely the Churchill Plaza location, I don't see where you're addressing the possibility that we would discontinue the operation, not look for a different location. And the reason I say that, and I know lots of what I'm saying you've heard before, but I think anybody that lives in Sault Ste. Marie knows that the main branch library is a beautiful library with a lot of potential. I don't think it has yet reached its full potential. I know that it has a lot of potential in location, just the atmosphere, the environment. And the fact that it sits a very short distance away from the Churchill Plaza, I don't understand why your board has not discussed the possibility of actually shutting down that operation. $100,000 a year in taxes, in the rent alone. I don't understand why nobody else seems to be on this mindset. All we keep hearing is, well, we're looking to Manitou Park or maybe the Wellington Square Mall. What about if we look at enhancing the main branch? And I'm not telling you how to operate, okay? It's not my point.
You kind of are, but beside the point, Councillor Fata, just hold on a second here. We're going to hear a full presentation on what I understand. Looking ahead in the slide deck I have here, you're going to talk about that. So, Councillor Fata, I think what you should do is hold your comment, and once you've had the presentation from the library board about what they intend on doing, we could have a relevant discussion on it then. And it will be relevant, and you could say whatever you like and ask whatever questions you like. But you're getting ahead of us here.
Okay. I will say this.
Don't reframe it and take a different run at it now.
No. What I will say is this right now, and I'm telling you this truthfully, I think people out there right now are watching this exercise and they're saying, where are the cuts? Where are the changes that bring this budget down for libraries? Just like Councillor Hollingsworth said, it's the sign of the times, but I don't see this being registered in the minds of your board or yourself.
Okay, Councillor Fata, thank you for your comment. Councillor Christian?
I think I forgot my questions. Anyway, thank you very much for the presentation, Roxanne. And I was tempted to ask you a question about where you think library should be, because you light up every time we talk about. So I was going to do that for my entertainment, but you made your point. By the way, libraries do play a role in our community. They're a social gathering place, and they are learning centers. So I'm a fan, whatever the configuration is, it is. But just one quick question. You may have answered this, and I missed it, and I apologize. But under Public Library, 2016 operating budget, other grants. 2015 budget, $25,000. 2016 budget, $3,000. Change of $21,896. Can you explain what other grants are and why the drop?
I definitely can. Back in 2009, the provincial government announced the $15 million for all Ontario public libraries. 2 years ago, they announced additional $10 million for public libraries over a 3-year period. So the first 2 years, each public library in Ontario received a certain amount of funding. And this year, what they have done is they put that funding towards research to benefit all public libraries. So none of us are getting a little pot of money. Also, last year, what the library board had done was not only receive that, but also apply for another grant to run our board cafe program. So that was an additional fund that we received from other grants.
Okay. Thank you. I agree. I think libraries are evolving. I think in my lifetime they're going to be needed. What the future 25 years from now holds, I don't know, but I think they are evolving. And I think the question about locations should be part of a discussion about what the libraries are going to look like in the future before we make a decision on where they should be. Thank you.
So, Roxanne, I'm going to ask you to move on to your next presentation, and then we can ask questions that relate specifically to it.
Okay, thank you very much.
And just to be mindful of time, because thank you.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak with you tonight about library services in Sault Ste. Marie, an exciting new adventure to enhance and make our library services upgraded, enhanced for the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie. I would just like to take a moment to introduce you to our library board that's present tonight. We have Elspeth Belair, who's the vice chair, Luke DeFore, Wayne Greco, Tony Nanny Little, Moira O'Pally, Francis Ryan, Doreen Samard, and we have 2 guests with us to help present tonight, Lou Reese, who's the Director of Education, and Joe Santa Maria, who's the Superintendent of Business from the Algoma District School Board. In 1964, City Council unanimously agreed to construct a new public library as the Sault Ste. Marie Centennial Project. This timing of the Centennial grants could not have been more advantageous for the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Early in the planning stages, it was decided that the most appropriate location for the new library would be on the waterfront in the vicinity of Clerk Park. Morrow, Roundwith, and Dick designed the building that was subsequently constructed by Newman Brothers. As a reflection of the major industry in the community, the exterior of the building was constructed with algal cord tin steel, a special alloy that was designed to rust only until it contained a chocolate brown patina. When the new award-winning library officially opened in July 1966, it was generally regarded as the jewel of the waterfront. Over the years, the library underwent a number of renovations. An elevator was installed in 1982, making the building accessible. Then in April of 1993, a series of major changes began. In discussion with city officials, it was decided that the funds were not available for an expansion and that the area needed to be redesigned to better use the space. The library was also in the planning stages of looking at an archival and display area to save the potential and protect our local history. This again was decided that lack of funds were not available and to try and make the best possible use of the space in the Centennial Room at the Centennial Library. The Centennial Room was closed and the administration offices relocated to that space, which gave us more space upstairs for programming. As the population of the community spread eastward, the need for library facilities in the East End became apparent. As a result, the East End Branch Library opened in the Churchill Plaza in the March of 1966. This particular library was intended to be a circulating library, not only a reading or reference area. The rental accommodations used in the East Branch were expanded in 1991. If you remember, we moved a couple of times at that area when additional space became available. But renting a commercial space depends on the demand of the local economy. The rental cost for that space is always increasing. In 2012, the construction of the Northern Community Center, the old Cora Branch Library was replaced with a new, open, accessible facility that today experiences more than double usage and our other comparison. We're moving along here. We know we had 5 minutes.
You're way beyond your 5 minutes.
I know, we're moving.
You need to move it along at a factor of like 10 of how you're currently moving it along. Yeah.
We're experiencing challenging times, and I know that because I've been watching this council meet for the last few weeks on television. And challenging times require creative responses. Challenging times require looking at emerging opportunities. And as a public library board, we take very seriously our task of providing quality service that's responsible to our community's needs and its fiscal realities. And like you, we want to ensure that there is value for every dollar spent. And thus, when the Algoma District School Board invited us to consider being part of a possible community hub located at what was formerly known as the Alexander Henry School Building on Northern Avenue, we took note. Our library tagline is "One Stop, Endless Possibilities." We know that both schools and libraries are gathering places that help our community members, whether young or old, learn and grow. This was a wonderful opportunity to create a community hub in the very area that is quickly becoming the center of our city. And so we began our research. In 2015, the provincial government released a report from its advisory group called Community Hubs in Ontario, a Strategic Framework and Action Plan. The document suggests that hubs offer the opportunity to coordinate services such as education and social services around the needs of a local community. The report was based on hundreds of consultations, surveys, site visits to existing hubs, and testimonials. The report provides much evidence to show the many benefits of a community hub model. We believe as a library board that this opportunity is a perfect example of managing public properties thoughtfully and making services accessible to community members. This hub would definitely be one stop, many possibilities. And our folks from ADSB will provide more details on this in a moment. We have the willingness to overcome jurisdictional and sectoral silos, and we want to work collaboratively with this coordinated model. Definitely a cost-effective way to utilize existing assets. So we want to think outside the box. Let's show our community that we can do more. Let's take this opportunity to make Sault Ste. Marie a leader in creating synergies that's going to contribute to the quality of life in our city. The social return on investment is there. We feel it just makes sense.
I have a question before you proceed. So we have your 2016 budget in front of us. Yes. That 2016 budget, does it include this project? Because it doesn't.
No.
So, because I mean, it was hard. It was hard for me when I was looking at the slide deck. Mm-hmm. So, because there's an ask at the end of the slide deck. The 2016 budget is operation as per usual. So
exactly.
You're going to run the Churchill branch the same way you always did. This is actually a larger ask for 2017. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. That would be the same operating we're looking at.
I think I miscommunicated there. I didn't communicate clearly. That was my fault. This ask, regardless of the size of it, is actually what you want to do in 2017.
Yes.
So the endorsement you're
Precisely.
asking at the end of this is an endorsement for council to endorse in 2017.
Exactly, because this project is not going to be running until September
I
2017.
understand. So I really don't want to rush you through this because I feel like it's probably really important, and I really appreciate the community project they're trying to put together. But you have another, by my count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more people to speak on this.
Well, 2 more. But no, I completely understand. I appreciate,
So
we all appreciate.
what I'm thinking is it doesn't bear on this budget this year. So we can, I'm going to ask we can proceed, council, and you could hear the whole presentation, or we could have them back at a regular council meeting in the very near future to get a fulsome presentation on what they're talking about. Or we can proceed right now and we can go through their presentation and you can make a decision if you feel like you have the information to make a decision. But this, if I had appreciated that this was for the 2017 year, we probably wouldn't have went down this road during this budget meeting. I understood this was for this year, or you were looking to make the change this year.
No.
So I'm just going to ask council here, do you want to focus on their 2016 budget, or do you want to continue the conversation on 2017? Councillor Butland?
Exciting project, and I think we need to bring this back, and as you indicated, Mr. Mayor, let's have a full report and have the information before us with more detail, because right now we're all going to sense, well, we got to rush through this because it's, yeah, I don't want to be rude, but I hope you understand that this is important, but we're dealing with 2016 budget.
Yeah, my thinking is twofold. We're focused on the 2016 budget, and I don't want what is, I'm sure, a very important project to you folks, and I'm sure you've worked very hard on it. I don't want to give it short thrift by not giving you a fulsome opportunity to present on it, but it doesn't impact the 2016 budget. Am I correct in that respect?
Exactly. It does not impact the 2016 budget.
So just a straw poll, show of hands, council, do you want to continue with this 2017 discussion now? Any interest in that? Seeing none, I think what we should do is, a full report should be put together for council that we can consider at a regular council meeting, and then we can support that for the 2017 budget or not.
The only, Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, the only reason that we brought it in is because of the fact that this project is going forward very quickly, and the Algoma District School Board needs a response from us in short order.
Well, we have Ms. Reese here. Ms. Reese, when do you need a response from the library board by? Soon. So if this was dealt with at our first council meeting in April, would that be early enough for you? So the CAO and the clerk are sitting here, and they're the other 2/3 of the agenda review committee. So we will put this matter as it relates to the 2017 configuration of the library. It'll be considered at council's first meeting in April. So circling back then, we're just dealing with the 2016 budget. Councillor Fada, you had some questions or comments that you wanted to make on that?
On this item just now?
On the 2016 budget, not on something we're going to talk about in April.
So we shouldn't be bringing up the Alexander Henry then? Because what I'm trying to understand is why is the city of Sault Ste. Marie and taxpayers dealing with a library in a public school that normally the Board of Education would be responsible for? Why are we having this conversation?
I think that proposal will be put to you in full in our first meeting in April.
But it looks like things have to move forward to some degree.
They do, and the Director of Education said she would be satisfied to hear back from us in the first meeting of April. So am I to assume that we're talking about a fourth library in Sault Ste. Marie? No, they would be closed. The Churchill Library would the Churchill Library be moving?
Yes.
The Churchill Library would be moving to...
I don't think most people out there knew that. Certainly I didn't know that.
Okay.
I thought we were talking about a fourth library.
You're not?
No. It is in the presentation at the summary page. I apologize, Mr. Mayor, to you, Councillor Fada.
Yeah,
it is on our last page in our presentation to say about moving the Churchill Branch Library.
To the...
Okay. So do we have any other questions of the Director of the Library on her 2016 budget? Seeing none, thank you. And thank you, folks, for your attendance. And, we have Councillor Shoemaker has a question.
We're going to get that information back
Yes,
before
before.
the March meeting?
Yes, sir.
March 21st? Okay, good, thanks.
Councillor Romano?
Not to tie up time right now, but do you think I could get, or maybe all of us could get an email just with respect to all the hours of operation for each 3 locations? And maybe even staffing, whether they differ between the 3 or whether there's overlap?
From you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Romano, absolutely.
Please and
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attendance. So, Chief, we're not getting to you next, so I apologize. You're going to have to wait.
I thought all these people were here for me.
Yeah. So what we will do then is, we don't have a presentation of the art, do we have a presentation from the art gallery?
We do not have a presentation for the art
So-
gallery. However, Yasmina Jovanovic, the director, and Mark Laporte, the president, are in attendance to answer any questions.
So if you have any questions about the art gallery budget, we have Yasmina here along with Mr. Laporte. Nice to see you both. You're welcome to come to the mic. Do we have any questions? I'm sorry, Councillor Mano?
I've got a conflict with respect to this matter.
Understood.
Didn't know that already.
Okay, Councillor Romano is declaring a conflict. So do we have any questions about the art gallery budget? So,
Well, we did not, I apologize, we did not submit our presentation because we were not notified on time to do it. So we only found out the day before the submissions were due.
so there was some, I guess, problem in communication between the clerk's office and the art gallery. Sorry?
How can we ask questions if we don't?
Yeah, I didn't realize it didn't make it into your package.
So anyway, what we can tell you is that our budget actually in this year decreased for about 15% because we are trying to make do. The funding from the city covers approximately 33% of our budget. The overall public funding is approximately, I will tell you, I don't want to make a mistake here.
Yeah,
Sorry?
it's in the paper. But
Yeah, you do have it,
there's
you do
nothing
have
else
it,
that-
yeah. Sorry, I was just pointing out, Yasmin, I was pointing out to council, they do have your budget.
Okay. Not all of it, probably. So the self-generated revenue and public sector revenue are kind of in a range of almost 50-50. And we really are struggling to maintain that, so any further cuts would really have higher impact on the programming we offer and services we offer to the community. I would like also to say that our total attendance last year was 30,683 people to different things, which includes exhibitions, events, and education programming. We have a lot of events that are really catered to education and or fundraising. So that's basically what we do on an ongoing basis to maintain the revenue stream. We do have the gallery shop as well. That is part of that, but not a big significant percentage. And I don't know, Mark, if there's anything else to say.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I can advise as president of the board, the gallery faces a constant struggle in trying to maintain its current service level to the community. As being a public institution, being an institution which maintains significant aspects of our culture and the public trust, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain our current service level simply by maintaining the budget as it is. We've made significant advances in terms of cutting the budget, in terms of finding cost efficiencies, but we're getting to the point that it simply cannot be done any further. We cannot face any more cuts, because if we do, I don't need to be the ominous voice in the room, but if we continue to cut this institution's funding, we've got a problem. And I would submit that the city of Sault Ste. Marie, therefore, would have a detrimental impact.
Sure. When was the last time you received a funding increase?
A funding increase?
Well, from where?
From the city, from the municipality?
Well, we receive the inflation increase every year.
Well, just the salary increase, but
Yeah, but other than that, no, absolutely Not in 5 years, for sure.
Council, I apologize. I don't know why you don't have their budgets in front of you, and it's not very helpful to you folks, and you can't really do much with it. So, yeah, we can. I mean, if there are no other, if based on the fact that you don't really have the information, if you have no questions of them, we can move on, and hopefully we'll have the information before us before the March 22nd deliberation, and we can. And we could, Commissioner Schell, yeah, you can go ahead, Commissioner Schell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council, there are several organizations that have been grandfathered over the years that have received ongoing funding from the city. They do not submit their full budgets to the city. They never have. The Art Gallery is one, the Sault Ste. Marie Museum is another, and the Bush Plain Museum is another. There's several of them, also like Safe Communities, the Algoma University, the annual amount that we give to them, the memorial exemption is given to the Legion, as well as the Pee Wee Arena annual grant. We do not receive full budgets from these organizations. This has just been what has happened in the past.
But if they're going to come here and present to us and we're going to have a conversation about it, having their budget would be helpful. Mm-hmm. So maybe perhaps, we could get that information. So we appreciate your attendance, and I certainly value the service you provide to the community. We'll have a broader discussion about the funding shortly. So thank you. Is the same going to apply to the, I know the Bush Plain has a presentation, but the museum, I expect we're in the same situation with the museum, are we not?
That's correct, that and the Safe Communities, yep.
Okay, so I don't see any issue in belaboring those points. If we didn't receive any representations from the museum has a representative here. Mr. Weeks, did you want to make any comments? Okay. No, I don't think anybody's going to insist. So if nobody has any questions on the museum, we can move on. We have the Safe Community Partnerships. We don't have a presentation on the Safe Community Partnerships. Did you have any comments you want to make? See some representatives here. Could you come to the mic, please?
When we put in our application for funding, we did put in a forecasted budget. So if there's something different that's needed, could somebody please let me know?
Well, thank you for putting in a budget. It wasn't attached to the council agenda, and it should have been. So I'll ensure that the council has that budget prior to its March 22nd deliberation. So if it has any questions of you, we'll certainly ask those.
Right.
You won't have. We'll let you know if there's a need to come back.
Okay. I guess the one thing that I would like to say about the contribution that we received from council is that I think for all the people that we touched last year for the $40,000, it was $8 a person. To keep people safe. And that's nothing to do with the stuff that we do in industry. This is to do with children and seniors. So we're very pleased with, I think that's a pretty good return on your investment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, you're welcome to go.
Thank you.
No, I think the bush wait will probably be longer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening, I will be, prior to getting into the presentation, I just want to acknowledge the representatives from the service. So, Police Service Board Chair, John Bruno is here, Deputy is here, and our Manager of Finance is here, and I want to apologize to her. Today's her birthday, so we've...
well, happy birthday.
Totally disrupted her plans for this evening, but we'll try and get through this as quickly as possible. So it's my pleasure to present the 2016 budget on behalf of the Police Services Board for the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service. I believe that the budget is reflective of the challenges facing our community, balances the expectations of our residents, and ensures our ability to provide adequate and effective policing within Sault Ste. Marie. Policing continues to be the focus of much attention from media, national, provincial, and local government, and members of the public. Police agencies continue to face significant challenges from competition for declining resources and the increased costs of service delivery. It is widely acknowledged that the current model of policing is not economically stable and that we must continue to refine and adjust our service model to create a truly sustainable and effective approach to crime reduction and building a safer and healthier community. This re-engineering process has already started within the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service under the leadership of Senior Command and our Police Services Board, but will not occur overnight. The full net return from a budgeting standpoint may not be realized for years, but nonetheless must be undertaken. The 2016 Police Services budget attempts to strike a balance between the need for fiscal responsibility and the expectations of policing services by members of our community. There are numerous factors which impact the overall cost of delivering policing services within our community, many of which we have little or no control over. Provisions within adequacy standards, regulations, court case law requirements, and the downloading of services has significant impacts on the cost of providing police services in Sault Ste. Marie and Prince Township. 0% budgets cannot be maintained forever and eventually have a tendency to catch up with you. This year's budget is lean and comes with the potential risk of going over budget as a result of factors beyond our control, such as major incidents, natural disasters, and unanticipated staffing issues. And the one thing I'd like to do, and I'm not going to go through the entire content, but highlight a couple areas on the slide. So we talk about the downloading the services. We're required to provide security within the courthouse, and we do receive grants from the provincial government, but the net impact to the municipal taxpayer associated with Sault Ste. Marie is $350,000 to deliver those above what were provided through grants. And we also see challenges with the downloading of services, and I use mental health as an example. We've seen an increase in the number of mental health calls for service to the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service in 2015 compared to 2014 of 40.7%. And again, issues over which we have no control. There's been much debate and media focus around the perceived escalating costs of policing. I think we have to be cautious when we blindly entertain these type of discussions. As you can see from the slide, the percentage of municipal budget allocated to policing within Sault Ste. Marie has remained fairly constant over the past 4 years, and costs have increased at a similar pace within other municipal services. Significant, when I look at the 2015 budget, significant efforts have been undertaken to reduce the cost of providing police services already within Sault Ste. Marie Police Service. These include reducing overtime by $363,000, legal fees by over $129,000, keeping our police cruisers longer, delaying hiring, accessing provincial grants and secondment opportunities, reducing our administrative staff, hiring experienced officers, and entering into shared space agreements. The process of evolving our service delivery model with a goal of becoming more efficient and effective without compromising our delivery of services to members of our community is a priority and ongoing process. The police service budget is broken down to 3 components: salaries and benefits. Approximately 83% of the police service budget is salaries and benefits. The 2016 budget does not reflect wage increases outstanding as a result of collective bargaining. The collective agreement with the Police Association has expired on December 31st, 2014. Police Services Board is presently bargaining a new collective agreement, which will impact the bottom line of our budget. Second component is operating expenditures. This is where day-to-day costs such as vehicle leases, fuel, electricity, training, office supplies, legal and technical support are included. And final is capital expenditures. This is where we budget for capital items such as computers, softwares, service, and building updates. And I specifically want to take you into capital expenditures. So capital expenditures included within the budget are broken down into unavoidable, critical, and contracted. The area of capital expenditures was one which was sacrificed in previous budgets to realize a 0% budget increase in the past. Our building and equipment are aging and now require significant upgrades to meet standards. Although the percentage increase, 72%, seems large, the overall impact on the police services budget for capital expenditures in 2016 is only 2.6% of the overall budget. We've reinvested savings from salaries and benefits portion of the budget in our capital expenditures to minimize the overall 2016 budget increase. This factors impacting the 2016 budget. The issues associated with accommodating staff who are on short-term and long-term illness is significant within the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service. The Police Services Act of Ontario requires police services to accommodate members unless they can prove undue hardship. In our police service, we presently have 33 members of the 137 uniform officers who are accommodated, 9 of whom are in operational roles, and 24 who are unable to undertake the typical duties of a police officer. That approximately is the size of 2 of our uniform platoons and is directly correlated to the overtime costs and staffing challenges within our service. This number is extremely high when compared to other police services. Strategies for the future. The police service is attempting to become much more strategic in our allocation of our limited resources. We are moving from a static deployment model to a risk-focused, data-driven model. This evolution will put resources at the right place, right time, and right location to respond to known calls for service demands. We're also attempting to prevent crime from occurring through prevention strategies rather than reacting once a crime has occurred. We have and are continuing to explore opportunities for civilianization in non-operational positions within the police service. In some cases, this reduces salary costs, but in other circumstances, it allows for the hiring of civilians with a higher education, more specialized skills and training, and reduces staff turnover. This is a long-term strategy which will take time to fully operationalize. We have been successful in the past in accessing provincial funding opportunities available to the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services, and will continue our efforts to access provincial funding where possible. Multi-sectoral collaboration with partner agencies and community residents benefits us all. Addressing factors such as poverty, addictions, standard of living, lack of social supports, income, and social status through a multifaceted approach involving a broad spectrum of community partners and stakeholders is the best approach to increasing community safety and well-being. It just makes common sense. Addressing the cost of delivering policing services within our community is a priority for the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service in conjunction with our police services boards. Numerous other strategies are presently being discussed at a board level, but it would be premature to identify those at this point in time. You have my commitment and that of the Police Services Board to explore all options available to reduce our costs while maintaining a high standard of delivering policing service to all members of our community. Members of the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service are proud of the service which they provide and dedicated to enhancing the quality of life within Sault Ste. Marie and Prince Township by working cooperatively to enforce laws, preserve the peace, reduce fear, and provide a safe environment, creating and maintaining a community that is healthy, inclusive, cohesive, and resilient, where members of our community can expect to live free of crime and violence, and the fear of crime is something which benefits us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council, I am going to keep my comments and questions to a bare minimum because, just so you're all aware, I'm on the negotiating committee for the collective agreement. I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to express opinions or talk about different things that relate to this budget while we're in the process of negotiating. My only comment is that I'm very confident with our chief and with his intentions and efforts and what he's doing at the Police Services Board, and I'd just like to recognize what he is attempting to do at our police services. And I think Councillor Bruni would also indicate that we have a strong board and we're working hard together, and we look forward to the next couple of years, and I do too. So we can take questions. Councillor Romano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Chief Keach. If you have this number offhand, I wouldn't mind it, or otherwise I'm happy if you send it to me as an email, but I'm curious as to what the total costs are for utilities, energy costs within the building.
I'm sorry, if through you, Mr. Mayor, I didn't catch the question. If you could repeat it, please.
Looking for the costs with respect to utility costs, energy costs within the building.
They might well have that here, Councillor Merrill.
If you do, otherwise I'm happy to have it as an email.
$175,000.
Okay, thanks.
Is that it, Mr. Romano?
That's all.
Councillor Romano, Councillor.
Oh, actually, no, sorry, I do have one other one. Sorry, I apologize. In the capital expenditures slide, you have a notation here for security camera upgrade. Is that with respect to the parking lot?
I'm advised the entire building, through you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Romano, the entire building.
Okay. And the interview room upgrade, what does that refer to?
That, through you again, Your Mayor, to Councillor Romano, that reflects the upgrade in the requirement to capture interviews digitally for disclosure for court purposes.
Okay,
so that's an enhancement in the existing infrastructure that we have.
I had a feeling that's what you're referring to, and I apologize, and I hate to use my other hat that I wear, but I spend umpteen hours per week watching the videos that come out of that room. And I don't, what's the problem with it, I guess, is where I'm coming from.
They are outdated, and there's some concerns with regard to the quality of those, and they're due for replacement. It's the long and the short of that answer.
Okay. I suppose someone nitpickier than me then is watching them as well. Thanks.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you for your report, your presentation. These are just broad questions. Would you be able to provide a breakdown on where most of your time is spent when it comes to policing? For example, you mentioned senior citizens calls are on the increase, I believe you were saying?
I believe through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Hollingsworth, mental health was one that I specifically spoke to.
Okay.
40% increase in the number of calls involving mental health issues in 2015 compared to 2014. We do extensive analytics. We have the ability to do that. So we analyze our calls for service by type, by location, by priority type, by date, time of the week, by month, by season, by hour of the day. Right. We have quite extensive ability to do that type of analysis, and that forms that strategic deployment of limited resources and reporting of increase in crimes and or decrease.
Okay. I guess where I'm going with this is I'm curious because I know youth are very important to our community. And I know that you and your team have been focusing very much on youth situations. So I guess my own curiosity is, where are you going with helping our youth? Yeah. And the other piece is, you did touch on mental health, and yes, it is on the increase. But I was just wondering if you had some more information on the youth. And as we build a community plan, I think having this information might be helpful as we move forward.
So again, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Hollingsworth, we're seeing crime in Sault Ste. Marie, provincially and nationally, on a 40-year downward trend, and that again is reflective in our youth crime. So, which we view as a positive. Mm-hmm. We spend a lot of time proactively involved with youth rather than reactively. So let's not wait for them to get in trouble. Let's engage them and, in a sense, provide opportunities or develop a level of trust. We call that police legitimacy. We think that's the greatest preventative factor that we have in youth not committing crimes. Very risk-focused, very proactive-focused, rather than traditional reactive-based. And I hope that has answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And just one question. I have another question, somewhat related to the budget, but I know you're doing different campaigns. I think the recent campaign is texting, trying to reduce drivers and using their cell phones.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we identify a priority within our traffic division on a monthly basis. We communicate that in a sense to try and prevent it, but we also coincide that with an enforcement initiative. So the month of March actually is distracted driving, and illegal window tint is the priority that's been identified, and we have specific prevention strategies associated with that and enforcement strategies as well.
Okay, and I know it's somewhat not related to the budget, but thank you.
Okay, so we have Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions for the chief. Chief, I'm looking at the BMA study that we're all now so fond of, and it compares policing costs across various communities, and one of the categories is population centers of 30,000 to 99,000, and we fit into that population center. And our costs per 100,000 of assessment, as we've heard, there's benefits and negatives to using that factor for determining comparative tax rates, but at least that comparator for policing rates, ours is second highest on the list. Sault Ste. Marie, $431 per $100,000 of tax assessment versus Sarnia, for example, which is of a similar size, $342. So almost, that's $90 less per $100,000 of assessment. And other cities like North Bay, again, similar reductions. That's only $306 per $100,000 of assessment. So why is it, perhaps this is a bit broad of a question, but why is it that our costs per $100,000 of assessment are so much higher, like more than $100 higher than many of these similar sized communities?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Shoemaker, I'm very familiar with that study, and through the mayor, very familiar with those numbers as well. I'd also, and I caution when we look at those, so I could provide you numbers with regard to financial information return that's done through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, which identifies the cost for Sault Ste. Marie as $750 per household. And I look at Thunder Bay as a comparator, $893, Timmins, $766, North Bay, $767, Sudbury, $682, with a provincial average of $825. So again, when you begin to look at numbers and this type of analysis, you have to take it with a grain of salt. The one thing that I would say with regard to policing in Sault Ste. Marie is, as it was explained to me when I took over the job, you were somewhat on an island. We're somewhat isolated. So the certain level of services that we have to provide due to that remoteness and so the size of our community has a direct impact. And I'll give you one specific example. Councillor Shoemaker, is our ESU unit. So we maintain a fully functional tactical unit for our level of service, which has a significant cost associated with that. But there's a requirement through adequacy to either have that or enter into an agreement with another service to provide those level of services. I can tell you that if we were to enter into that agreement, it is with the OPP. And the closest tactical unit is Aurelia. So your response time is, I would say 6 hours, would be optimistic. We utilize the ESU unit on all high-risk vehicle stops, all high-risk drug warrants, all tactical situations. So they're being remotely located increased the costs associated with delivering policing services to our community. The other thing that, and I listened attentively to the earlier presentation with regard to the breakdown of our tax levy. And again, I would suggest that when you look at it, there's a direct correlation, I think, with the amount of industrial and business tax levy associated with Sault Ste. Marie and the correlation with that MBA report, which you're referencing, and the impact of that number, that increased number, is somewhat reflective of the limited industrial and commercial tax rates in Sault Ste. Marie, I would suggest.
Okay, that's helpful. I guess our remoteness is in some regards a positive and others a negative. And obviously in policing costs, it has some detriments. What about other comparators, like the number of full-time staff on the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services versus other communities of similar size. Peterborough, so Sault Ste. Marie 176, for example, Peterborough 167, Sarnia 153. What are the discrepancies there, or what are the cause for the discrepancies there?
That's through you, Your Worship, and back to Councillor Shoemaker. That's trust me, that's a discussion that we've had at a board level, and that the mayor's had with me as an individual. We're certainly aware of those numbers. Again, the numbers that I spoke to with regard to individuals on short-term and long-term disability significantly impact our ability to deliver policing services within this community. So that, I think there would be a correlation there. Again, I don't want to get into strategies which we've had discussions with from a board level in relation to addressing the issues of providing policing services, but I am very familiar with the numbers which you're referencing.
Okay. So if our number of people on either modified duty or accommodated duty are, I think it may have been the very term you used, significantly higher, or very much higher than other communities, is there a plan to try and find a solution to that problem?
Yeah, and I mean, we've been having ongoing dialogue, and I'm going to give you an example to cite the discussions specific to that. So one of the issues with regard to the current collective agreement is a requirement for complement and a requirement for two-man patrols. So that the inability to staff up to full complement, in a sense, any of those numbers traditionally are reflective on our complement at front lines, and the ability to maintain contractual requirements to staff a certain number on a particular day, specifically on evening shift and night shift. So when we talked about the savings in minimum manpower, early on in taking office, I saw the number associated with overtime with minimum manpower. I did a presentation to the board and asked them we had 4 individuals off on LTV, and I asked them to increase our complement to hire 2 full-time people to put on uniform, and we redeployed 2 individuals back. So we sent 4 people back to front lines, 1 on each platoon. And I mean, the number that I reported, 333,000 in 2015, and I can tell you there was an additional probably 150,000 in 2014 in reduced overtime associated with this contractual obligations. Those are discussions that we've had with the board and support of the board. So in a sense, you saw a temporary increase in complement, but a net savings associated with that. And there's ongoing dialogue with the board in relation to those types of issues.
Okay. And is the overtime that you're still incurring, I know it's down, I mean, is it because of these complement requirements that you're still incurring these overtime costs? Or is that, I know there's probably various reasons why you're incurring the overtime costs, but is the main reason because of the complement requirements?
Previously, I would, again, through your worship to Councillor Shoemaker, I would suggest previously there was a significant impact as a result of staffing changes and deployment changes within your organization. We've seen a decrease, but there are a number of factors that you've illustrated. So I don't believe we had a murder in 2015. Whodunit murder significantly impacts your overtime, and we have very limited ability to control that type of an incident. So again, there's no simple answer to the question you're asking.
You sort of touched on my point. I've got another question, but I'll say a comment right now because you sort of touched on my point. There wasn't, a murder, thankfully, in 2015, and yet the overtime is still high. It's down, but it's still high. So I was hopeful that there would be this is causing our overtime to be high. You could pinpoint something, but it doesn't sound like you can.
You're looking for the silver bullet?
That's right.
Yeah, I don't think it exists. I can tell you from an organizational perspective, I report to the board on a monthly basis in regards to overtime. We chart it, we analyze it as a command team. We review it and evaluate it and look for efficiencies. We do that on an ongoing basis, and I think that's incumbent on us as leaders within the organization to do that. And then there's other strategies that are being discussed at a board level in relation to with the desired outcome of reducing the amount of overtime associated with providing policing services in this community.
Okay, my last question, Mr. Mayor, through you. It was 3 or 4 months ago, Crime Stoppers came to us and asked for a certain amount of money. I can't remember what it was.
30,000, I believe.
30,000, that's right. And at the time, I think the comments were, well, you know, we don't feel great about giving up, you know, parting ways with this 30,000. But you happened to be here at that meeting, and I think piped up with something along the lines of, you know, I'm pretty confident my budget will come in under budget for 2015 or 16 or whatever budget year we're now in. So I think it gave us some assurances that if we parted ways with the 30,000 now, we might be able to recoup some from your budget. I know you don't want to fund Crime Stoppers directly. I get that, but is there an opportunity to use money from your budget to basically offset what we've incurred for the Crime Stoppers?
On a going forward basis, you're saying, Councillor Shoemaker?
That's right.
So you're asking the chief if he can reduce his budget by $30,000 so we could fund Crime Stoppers.
Absolutely.
You recognize that the vote earlier tonight approved the funding to Crime Stoppers.
I didn't vote for that one.
Oh, you didn't vote
in favor of that one.
Yeah.
But I do recognize that. But I mean, I only ask because you were here at that meeting and because the conversation came up. I think it's fair to sort of put our hand out and ask for the 30,000.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Shoemaker, I think I made a commitment at that point in time that I anticipated that I would come under budget for 2015. I don't want to go into specifics. I've had preliminary discussions with Commissioner Schell in relation to the status of our 2015 budget. And, you know, I mean, at this point in time, I just want to tell Council that I think you will be pleasantly surprised in relation to the 2015 operating final 2015 operating budget for the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service. I'll invite you back to have that discussion once those numbers are finalized.
Okay, perfect. So we have to wait a bit longer.
A little bit longer.
Okay.
Councillor Mano?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to you, Chief Keach. Recent comments about overtime just sort of sparked a thought, if I can put it that way. Is the time utilized for officer court time, and just for everybody's purposes, when they're called in to testify in court, when officers are called in to testify, is that always overtime, or is that in their specific scheduled shift time?
Yeah, so through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Romano, that's something which we monitor and report to the board on a monthly basis at our Police Services Board meeting. So there was a strategy developed previously to attempt to schedule court during on-duty time. That necessitates the cooperation of the courts, which in some instances is somewhat difficult, but there's certainly a strategy in relation to that. And in 2015, I believe we reported to the board a significant reduction in overtime associated with court attendance as well. So that's something we track, evaluate, monitor, and try and improve on a yearly basis as well.
So the intention is to continue to improve it moving forward?
That's an annualized strategy that we attempt to decrease the numbers of situations where our officers attend court on overtime, and we prefer them to go when they're on duty because of the costs associated with that.
Is it not fair to say that you're in control of the overtime? Say, this is the situation, this is when our officers are available, that's it?
I wish it was as simple. I believe you work in the court system, Councillor Romano, and I wish it was as simple an answer to that. We certainly have the officer's court schedule and available there and attempt to schedule, but there's some instances where we have an officer from one shift and another officer from a specialized unit. And I'm giving you a very simplistic answer, but let's say we have a uniform officer that was involved in a case and a detective that's involved in the case. They don't work the same schedules. So you may attempt to schedule it for the day shift of the uniform constable, but the CID officer doesn't work that particular schedule, and as a result is brought in on overtime, something which we have no control over, absolutely.
I appreciate that, and again, given my particular knowledge of the situation, court dates are scheduled 6 months roughly in advance. So I would suspect that there's got to be a system where we can reduce that and make sure that our detective and our constable are on duty at the same time 6 months ahead so that they can be available, so it's not overtime.
Can I,
mean, we could
perhaps I'll send you our overtime numbers for 2015 associated with court time and show you the reduction. I believe it was a 10% reduction in 15 compared to 14. And provide you those. I just asked, I didn't bring those numbers in anticipation of that question. I certainly will provide you that information, and hopefully that will satisfy you, and or you can potentially bring me back to have that discussion as well.
Thank you very much.
Is that it from the police chief? Councillor Fata.
Thank you very much for the report. One question, some of the questions that I have are posed to me by taxpayers, but in terms of example being the 369 retention pay that are received by fire and police, how long does it take for a first-class constable to be reaching six-figure incomes? How many years approximately?
Are we including base salary? Are we including overtime?
Well, I certainly don't want to include overtime because, I mean, those are obviously, here and there. But I'm saying to you, a first-class constable begins his first shift with Sault Ste. Marie Police Services. At what point, approximately, is that constable making six-figure incomes?
Well, they are not at this point in time unless they're receiving overtime. I believe the base salary for a first-class constable is less than $100,000.
No, I think what Councillor Fat is missing here is Councillor Fat, they have to move up through the ranks. So I think what you're asking is, when do they get to that? Whether they're not going to be first class anymore, second class, third class.
No, of course. I'm talking about as an employee of police services, how long does it take for that rookie cop to become a recipient of six-figure income salary?
And again, through you, Your Worship, Councillor Fata, just clarification, we're talking base salary, and if we're talking base salary, they do not get to the $100,000, as the province refers to it, sunshine list. So the base salary of a first-class constable is still under $100,000 within the city of Sault Ste. Marie.
The last figure that we received from the finance commissioner is that there's 106 employees at police services that are making six figures. I would imagine most of those are police officers.
And again, I'm glad you asked that question through you, Your Worship, Councillor Fatter.
You're going to watch the chief bat himself in the back here.
Yeah, so the number I believe you told me was 106 in 2015?
That was the last figure that we received.
I can tell you the number is 69 in 2015. So we did an analysis of that, and there were a number of factors that impact that $100,000 threshold. Base salary being one, overtime being another. In 2014, we had 27 pay periods, which occurs every 7th year, which added an additional paycheck. There's extra duty, so an individual officer who agrees to work outside of the police services and say is contracted to do what we call extra duty. That salary is reflected in that number as well. But again, you're correct in your 106 in 2014. I can tell you the number because I've looked at it, I've asked for it, is 69 in 2015. So you've seen a significant reduction. And again, that's reflective of staff and the board attempting to minimize the costs of providing services within this community.
So in terms of the board and what they'll be doing in terms of contract negotiations, they do have to deal with 369.
Councillor Fata, we're not going to have any discussion here about what the board is doing with contract negotiations. None.
No, but that's
I'm negotiating, and that could create big legal problems. So we're not having a discussion here about what the board's doing with contract negotiations.
No, I wasn't asking for particulars about the outcome. I'm just saying that is a...
We're not having a discussion about contract negotiations here.
Just, you've said this a few times. Crime is down and domestic calls are up, I think is what you said in the past.
I don't believe I said that. If I did, I inadvertently said domestic calls. Crime is down. It's down on a 40-year trend. Calls for service are, if we look at the actual number, are this 2014 to 2015 are actually very close. But what we're seeing is the number of non-criminal matters reported to the police, either social disorder and or other, are up significantly. And those are associated with non-criminal calls for service. And that's reflective in Sault Ste. Marie, that's reflective of all services in Ontario and on a national basis.
You may have touched on this point, but I'll just bring it up briefly. In terms of dealing with issues within the police services building, the issue about whether we need a police officer dealing with people coming in for general inquiries and so forth, is the issue of whether civilians will be used in the future, is that something that's being addressed by yourself?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Fata, that is one of those individuals that I have to say are accommodated within the organization. All of those officers that you deal with when you walk in through the front doors are accommodated officers that don't have the ability to deploy to front lines to take calls for service for a variety of reasons.
So you're saying they are police officers, but for various reasons, injuries or what have you, they are not deployable out in the field?
Absolutely.
But they are still in that six-figure income category.
Well, again, I think I've been quite clear that the six-figure income, Councillor Fata, is not, if we're talking base salary, and I've asked you twice to clarify that with me, I do not have a first-class constable within the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service whose base salary exceeds $100,000.
No, I use the term first-class constable as a general term for a police officer. He could be a second-class or a third-class. It's not that I'm trying to say that it should be someone that just started working for the police services. I'm talking about a police officer working the front desk at police services. Doing general...
Through you, Your Worship, I'm going to clarify your question. You make a statement.
I'm going to give it a shot, as I understand the question that Councillor Fat is asking. You hire somebody; they're a first-class constable. Okay, so they get paid what they get paid. At what point does a police officer start earning $100,000? Is that your question, Councillor Fata?
That was my question about 15 minutes ago. Yes, sir.
I understand why the chief was confused, though. So,
and I believe I've been quite clear, and I'll reinforce that message again through you, Your Worship. To Councillor Fata, I do not have a first-class constable.
He's not asking that, Chief. He appreciates that you don't have a first-class constable making $100,000. What Councillor Fata is trying to figure out is, when does someone start making $100,000? What's the threshold?
It's only obtained through overtime, extra duty. That's how you... Okay. The base salary is below $100,000.
Do you understand that, Councillor?
I'm hearing that, but I don't really fully appreciate that, because I think that police officers are in fact making six-figure incomes just on their base salary.
Why don't I suggest this, Councillor Fata? I'm sure the police chief would be happy to sit down with you and review the pay at Sault Ste. Marie Police Services, because is that an appropriate thing for you to do, Chief, with the Councillor Fata if he comes by the police station?
Absolutely.
Okay. Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Fata?
Yes, sir.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
Okay. Again, thank you for your information. It's very helpful. It truly is. I was wondering, and this is just a general request more to you, Mayor, and the Deputy Clerk, because he has such information, good information, is it possible that we can invite him back in the future to expand on what they're doing for youth and what they're doing for the calls with regards to the mental side? And the reason I'm asking is that I think having more information like this helps us answer questions from our residents in our different wards, because I do feel you being proactive, and again, your educating us would allow us to educate our own ward members and so forth.
We could certainly have the chief back at a future date, certainly.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Councillor Butland.
Yes, just one. I was practicing the word but hiring of civilians. Yes. It's easier that way. You talked about some of these individuals being better served in doing certain things that a police officer might do, because they would be, I don't know, I think you made reference to education. Is it also a cost-saving measure? And also, is this accepted by the regular police force, that civilians can come in and do certain jobs.
Through Mr. Mayor, to you, Councillor Butland, certainly there are, in some instances, cost saving associated with the civilianization of positions, and that's a strategy. I think that's something that you're seeing, again, on a provincial, national basis with regard to policing, is that evolution. So you can hire individuals, and I don't want to identify all of them, but we're looking at a number. So let's say a computer specialist in our cybercrime unit. I can hire somebody with a university degree in computer analytics to undertake some aspects of that, which we don't have at this point in time, but we're certainly exploring that. That would be one example. They bring a level of education, they bring a level of experience that a traditional police officer does not possess, and that is potentially a means of saving money. The one thing that we do have is you have a pay equity process within the police service, and the pay equity process uses comparators within the policing profession to determine salary range. So in some instances you see savings associated with civilianization. In other instances you may not see a saving associated with civilianization of those positions. It's not I appreciate why you're asking, and there is no simple answer in relation to that.
Could I use an example?
You certainly could.
Okay. Officers at an intersection or at an accident scene directing traffic. Could a civilian do that job?
I don't believe under the Highway Traffic Act the civilian has the ability to direct traffic.
That's the answer. Okay, thank you.
Can I give you one example, probably a really easy example? Yeah. We have officers in public schools, we have officers in high schools. Yeah. So those are police officers, in many instances first-class constables that receive a first-class constable's wage. We have a number, the teaching profession right now has an overabundance of qualified teachers that can't secure employment within the teaching field. Would it be in the best interest to have the police service to hire somebody with a degree in education to deliver those programs within an educational sector? Yeah. We think, from a policing perspective, that is a good fit. But again, we have to be strategic in how that rolls out. So I don't want to increase my complement, and again, through the discussions with the board, I don't want to increase the number of civilians and potentially not decrease the number of officers, because that's a net increase to our budget. So we have to be strategic in when these opportunities occur. We have to be strategic in can we realize cost savings as a result of those type of decisions. And then we have to be reflective of the collective agreement. Can we do it within the current collective agreement that exists between the Police Services Board and the police associations?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Blunt. Council, any other questions? Thank you, Chief. Next, we have Canadian Bush Plane, Mr. Delfrey.
Thank you, Your Worship, Acting Mayor and members of Council. I only have 2 pages of speaking notes, so I could have gone before the Chief, but that's okay. So what I'd like to begin, I've been watching your deliberations, your council deliberations, and what I'd like to begin with is 2 observations that I've seen in your discussions. The first one has to do with your commissioners, a number of commissioners who talked about their need to invest in the facilities, the infrastructure, the properties that the city manages, the McMeekin Center and the roads were specific ones. And they claim that they need to make these investments in infrastructure so that the facilities don't deteriorate and then require additional cost over and above the regular maintenance to bring these on stream. The observation is that we're in exactly the same boat. We have a facility that we have to maintain, we have to operate. It's an old facility, so we need to make the same investments in those so that they don't deteriorate and obviously cost more to come back on stream. The second observation is it's very clear that you're facing significant financial pressure. There's no question about that. So our observation is welcome to our world. I mean, we've been poor forever. And so it's not a surprise to us that council needs to look at the issues that you're looking at. We do that all the time. So we paid attention to some of the criteria that were published in the media about a matrix or criteria to guide your budget deliberations, and we believe a number of those we can satisfy in terms of value, in terms of relevance to the community, some of the things that you're trying to make, you're trying to ensure that your tax dollars, our tax dollars rather, accomplish. We have two requests this year. The first one, as you see in our submission, is that the Bush Plain receives the same level of operating funds as other cultural attractions that the city supports. And you can see what the numbers are in our submission. There's a significant difference in the amount of money the city provides to cultural attractions, not counting the realty taxes that we pay that others don't. So there's a disparity in funding levels between the Bush Plain, which is the largest cultural attraction, yet receives significantly less money in operating revenues and also pays realty taxes. So there's a disparity there that we believe the city, in fairness and in terms of good value, should address. As I say, we need to invest in our facilities. We need to grow. There's a number of areas. You have our budget. We have not been able to make investments in the last number of years, and it's catching up to us to the point where it will begin to diminish the guest experience that we can offer, and that's a lesson we think we need to pay attention to from the tour train. Most of you know the story of the Agua Canyon tour train that was essentially allowed to deteriorate in quality to a point where they had to spend millions of dollars and buy a new train to bring that attraction on board so they can support the tourism industry. We want to avoid that scenario, and so we need to have at least a level of operations that's comparable to other attractions to be able to continue to offer the tourists and residents a good value for their admissions. I've given you numbers of our business line growth. We've seen growth in our business over the last 5 years. We've been aggressive and we've been creative with partnerships such as with the brewery and with new business lines. So we're doing just about everything we think we can do and things that most museums aren't doing to try to become sustainable. So the first part of our request this year is that we get consideration by you to achieve parity with other cultural attractions. And the second one, which is in similar vein, is that we're asking council to support by way of a resolution at some point assist us with the lobby to the province to deal with the disparity in funding to cultural attractions in Northern Ontario. We reported earlier that cities like Sudbury received $10 million from the province for cultural attractions. Thunder Bay gets a little over $1 million. North Bay gets a little over $1 million. Sault Ste. Marie gets a little over $100,000. So there's a disparity there, much like the disparity in the community we'd like some help with so that we can get on a level playing field and be able to grow our attraction so that we can support, as I say, we can support tourism in Sault Ste. Marie. Be happy to answer questions.
Okay, so who has questions to begin with? Councillor Bruni.
For your report, I guess it's more of a comment that you basically receive $40,000 from the provincial government, approximately?
46,000, that's correct.
46,000.
In operating revenue, yep.
And I just can't see why Sudbury, Thunder Bay, receives more funding than, say, the Bush Plain. You brought the Bush Plain to another level in the last couple of years with all your attractions that you attracted there, which is great to see. But I'm still puzzled why the provincial, even federally, I mean, it's Bush Plain, planes, and we can't get any funding from them. I just puzzled.
Well, what I can through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Bruni, what I can tell you is that the efforts that we've made, and we've made many efforts, including meetings with deputy ministers and presentations, and the efforts that our MPP, particularly when he was the Minister of Natural Resources, made. So it's not as if we haven't been trying, and he hasn't been trying. certainly when the Prime Minister visited us, our board members individually made attempts to say to him, we need to have support from the federal government, which is very difficult to get. If I had an answer about why the difference, I'd be able to give you a little better steerage on how to approach it. But so far, we have not been able to find a rationale that they're prepared to look at, either to distribute the community museum operating grant differently than they do now. There's been, in the industry in the province, there's a lot of museums that have been asking for clarification about how that money's allocated. They're not prepared to tell us. And so it really leaves us handicapped to be able to say to them, what is it that we need to do to get an increase? Because we don't know what the formula is.
I guess just a comment regarding your financial statement. It would be nice to see what your 2015 financial statement was.
I can send you that.
Well, towards the one that you're requesting for 2016. This is 2016?
That's the 2016 budget that you have.
Yeah,
we don't have
nice for a comparison.
our audit. The auditor began working today in our office for the 2015. I won't be able to give it to you for about a month or so until he's got his audit done. I can give you last year's, if that would help you.
Sure. That's fine. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Councillor Bruni. We have Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a comment, and I too echo what Councillor Bruni's saying. I mean, I think the bush plane has come a long way. I always enjoy being there. I think the displays are pretty impressive. Being a northerner, I really appreciate what you have to offer in there, and I do appreciate the efforts. I can't speak for council, but Mike, I've told you myself that I'm willing to support a resolution from this council to support your efforts. This is one of those things in the city that, despite the financial difficulties we have, this is something we need to hang on to. We can't let this slide. I mean, when you let an attraction like this go, if you're not willing to support it, you're sending the wrong message to the community and people around us that we're closing up shop. To me, this is an important attraction, and I think we need to support it. I'm not quite sure how the funding is going to work out this year. I'm simply telling you that I support your efforts, and I support the idea of looking for additional funding from the province, because we need to keep it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Councillor Shoemaker and then Councillor Romano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Commissioner of Finance. Commissioner, I see on the summary here of the funding that the bush plane receives that the Sault Ste. Marie Museum pay no realty taxes, the Art Gallery pay no realty taxes, but the bush plane center does pay realty taxes. I think that's probably because the city owns the other two. Am I correct in that assessment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, yes, you are correct.
Are there other non-city-owned properties in town that we reimburse the realty taxes for? I'm thinking specifically the Pee-wee.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. The Pee-wee Arena does get a grant that equates to the realty taxes, and that's an agreement that's been in place since 1969, and the basis of it was so that the city didn't have to build another arena after they just built the McMeekin, so the savings was put over to the Pee-wee through a grant.
Thank you. Those are my questions. But my comment is, it does seem that this puts the Bush Plane Museum at on an uneven footing with the other cultural attractions in town. I think we could, probably find a way around having them pay us realty taxes every year, given that we want to, it's sort of an indirect way of increasing their grant, I think. But it's one that I certainly would support.
Mike, do you get a rebate on those realty taxes?
We get a 40% rebate. There's a charitable tax rebate on 40% of the tax bill we pay. So we're able to recover 40% of it, but we still, of the $72,000 that we pay, we still pay 60%.
So the 72,000 isn't net of the 40%. The 72,000 is gross.
That's right.
So your taxes would be in the neighborhood of, yeah, about $45,000.
That's correct.
Councilor Romano?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Delfrey. Firstly, I just want to say you guys are doing an excellent job. When you look at the numbers, progressively since 2011 with the budget you've got, numbers of admissions are increasing year to year. The numbers of events are increasing year to year. These are excellent numbers.
Thank you.
The fact of the matter is, it's clear when you look at this that you're doing something right. So, be that as it may, and you've commented on the situation we find ourselves in and all our budget deliberations here, and the struggle that we're facing in terms of number crunching. So that's certainly a difficulty in terms of additional funding. I'm interested in Council Shoemaker's thought and how that would affect our levy ultimately, but or the reduction in what we would receive in those taxes. But you make the comment in your paper that you want to make a request to the province of Ontario through us to get further funding. There's obviously a huge disparity. You're seeing less than 100,000 when other communities of like sizes, similarly anyways, are receiving over $1 million. What is it specifically that you're asking us to do in that regard?
Through you, Your Worship, two things. One is a resolution. The council would engage the ministry, Tourism, Culture and Support that manage the Community Museum Operating Grant, and inquire about the process that we, or the rationale behind the amount of money that they give us. We can't find that out. They're not prepared to tell us that. So we don't know what we need to do to get an increase in that.
All right.
Every year we submit a request and we essentially ask for the same money we get year after year. So if we knew what they were basing their funding allocation on, we'd be able to say, here's what we're doing to warrant additional revenue. But we don't know what to say. We tell them what we do, but so far it hasn't resulted in an increase. Having another voice at the table, our municipality. When we met with them the last time, what they said to us very clearly, the deputy minister said to us, show us an increase in your operating funding from the city, show us an increase to show that you have community support, and then we will be prepared to look at an increase. We did that. We did receive an increase in support from you, and when we reported that, it didn't result in anything from the province. So clearly, it's just, we haven't figured out what it will take to get an increase from them. And we don't know if you would have better luck at that. Perhaps that's the best we can do. I mean, you keep hitting your head against the wall until it feels good when you stop.
I'd like to move a motion at this time.
Yeah, I don't think what I would suggest, Councilor Romano, is why don't you bring a motion to the next meeting, like think through the motion, talk to Councilor Delfrey, find a seconder, figure out what we got to do on this politically, and bring it to our next meeting, and we can move the motion at that point. I think we're all in uniform consensus that we'd love to help the Bush Plain figure out what's going on with the province of Ontario and secure more funding. And I mean, I'll save my comments to after, Mike, but that's really what they're going to be focused on.
Sure.
So can you...
The nature of my resolution was going to be basically a staff report back, almost using the wording, but I'm happy to do that at the next meeting.
That's because that's independent, essentially, of the actual 2016 budget. So I'm sure you'll get political support there. We have Councillor Hollingsworth next, and then Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Mayor. This is more of a statement. I'll keep it very brief, but I also want to say that the Heritage Bush Plain Museum is a great asset to this city, to this community, to the aviation, basically, industry of the area. So I just want to say I do support with what you're doing. And I think it's important to quickly emphasize, especially to the viewers out there in the community, how you have redefined a museum. Many people might think, oh, it's a museum, but I would like you to comment briefly, very briefly, on how you develop other revenue streams, how you have basically built community with your, I'm not going to call it museum because it's more than a museum, and how you have used the field schools, Ontario Works, to try lower unemployment and give new skills. But most of all, we have to remember Sault Ste. Marie's history is very much aviation. As most of you may know or may not know, we helped, correct me if wrong, I believe in training our World War I pilots, and that technology was developed in our city. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And the aircraft, the training aircrafts that were developed here in our city were sent out to Alberta, where our pilots in World War I were trained. That was our city, that's our history. And also, we need to emphasize that we have the second oldest beaver hanging in our heritage that is the forefront to fighting our original fires. We have a lot of history here, and we need to preserve it. So just very briefly, Mike, can you just reemphasize your definition of your heritage, if I may?
I think you just answered your own question, Councillor Hollingsworth. Mike, if you could supplement it very briefly,
Yes.
we'd like to land the plane on this.
Yeah, land the plane. Sure, Your Worship. I think the context I'd like to put my, the comments that Councillor Hollingsworth said is that we have been very innovative in trying to work with the resources we have, trying to have our needs met at no cost or very low cost, and at the same time providing opportunities in the community for people on Ontario Works to get some marketable skills, for students from White Pines to get some vocational skills, opening up partnerships for investors such as with a microbrewery. We're not sitting on our hands waiting to close the doors. We're very far outside the box. So I say that to you because any investment that you're prepared to make over and above is going to support that kind of a philosophy that we are a community resource. All of the assets that you manage in your own departments, the arenas, et cetera, are really they're owned by the community and they exist for the community benefit. We're no different. We don't know why we're seen as an outside agency. Outside of what? Outside of these walls, perhaps. But you need to see us and the cultural attractions as assets and resources that the community wants to have and is prepared to support. To have learning opportunities, volunteer opportunities, places to take family when they come to visit, tourists and so forth. We're not strangers. We preserve the heritage of the people who went before us. They're not strangers either. There are your parents, our grandparents, all the people who define who we are and what we have to be proud of in our community. So we struggle sometimes with having to come to council and say, you need to support us, you need to support us. We think we should be talking to the converted. And the fact that we have to make these kinds of requests really says, are we second-class citizens compared to other attractions that you manage? And I know in your new community plan, we're looking for an opportunity to be able to really speak about culture's role in new opportunities, because it's clear the existing opportunities, particularly in economic development, with steel and others, are really failing us. And maybe culture, there's lots of examples where when an economy fails, the community turns to culture to revive itself, particularly with its tourism industry.
Councillor Butland.
Not much to add with Councillor Shoemaker. I don't think there's a lot of appetite in this council right now to increase anybody's added subsidy to their operations, but taxes, I think we could address this and make the same statement every year about a museum, a heritage center, you name it. A community has to have them. And generally, and probably almost everywhere, they tend to lose money. But you just can't say, well, I don't think we need a bush plane museum or an art gallery. A city has to have them. It's not a city without them. So we have to do our best to support them. Some way, I think the taxes is, and the other one about working with you to lobby the government, that's an easy one, a natural. Let's go there quickly. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Councillor Fada?
Question?
Sure.
Under revenue, Mike, you've got the Ontario Works, and you've got a amount of about 247,000, is it? No, 227,000 under, sorry, hang on a second. You got it, total fund, and the figure was something like 247, and then you've got an expense of somewhere around 237.
That's
Can you
correct.
just explain that a little bit?
Okay, so the program that Ontario Works funds, the Building Maintenance and Construction Program, has a budget of about $247,000. Of that money, $237,000 goes to instructors from Sault College, and materials and supplies, including tools that these students take with them when they go to look for work. There's a $10,000 contribution. The difference between the budget and the operating cost of the program that's paid to the Bush Plane to administer the program.
Thank you. So, Mike, you know, I told you that I was going to have a difficult time supporting an increase in your budget. It's not because I don't think you've done a great job there. It's not because I don't think that the venue's a great venue and important to the city. I have a couple challenges with increasing the budget. One is that I strongly feel this is something we should be getting much more provincial support on. Our comparator cities get significant provincial support for these kind of cultural attractions. We don't.
Correct.
You know, you had indicated earlier there was a representation that if we increased our funding, you would see an increase in your support there. We increased our funding. You didn't see an increase in your support there.
That's correct.
So, you know, I'm obviously concerned with that dynamic, and I think that's where we should be focusing. This city council, I think, respects and appreciates the Bush Plane, and I think we showed that last year because you came here with an EDF funding request, and I think it was $100,000, and that was approved.
Just to be clear, that revenue, that $100,000 is to lever
I understand that.
capital grants, not operating.
I get that.
Okay.
I'm saying, but it's evidence and support from this group for the Bush Plane.
Oh, no doubt. I don't dispute that.
So, you know, certainly I think you're going to find a lot of support to help get to the bottom of the provincial funding issue. I think we can have some discussions over the next couple of weeks about the tax issue. I just think it's really difficult in this climate, particularly because of what we're doing with other city budgets and some city services, to increase the budget. So, you know, I would be really resistant to doing that. But that certainly doesn't mean that we shouldn't have some more conversations about how the city could help the Bush Plane or what we could do that might not necessarily be a budget increase. So we'll try and have those discussions over the next short period.
Okay.
Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much.
So, Council, we've got 3 motions that have been presented that we'd have to deal with. 2 are from Councillor Romano, and I'm just going to explain them briefly, and if Councillor Romano is agreeable, we'll dispose of them a certain way, because both motions staff has looked at and said they would like to give some feedback on. So Councillor Romano has a motion on LED lighting within city buildings. He's essentially saying, look, you know, we're doing LED transfer outside of the city. It's a good money-saving thing. We should look at it in the buildings. And there's a motion on it, so staff was saying that they'd like to come back with some information for us. So if that's okay, Councillor Romano, I'm just going to, it's acknowledged you put the motion forward, but we're going to give it to staff, and they'll bring back some information by the next meeting. Is that reasonable? Are you okay with that, Councillor Romano?
The concern I had is by the next meeting, we're going to be voting on a budget, and I would hope that we can have some information with respect to what the line item would be for our 2016 budget, if in fact there's an appetite for moving it forward. And
Sure, and I think that's the nature of what they want to look at. I mean, this is pretty close to voting on the budget, right? And you're talking about changing all the lights in the buildings to LED lights. So staff is aware of the motion, they have it here, and we'll give it to them, and they'll be able to come back and tell us whether it's feasible, whether it isn't feasible, what the cost savings would be.
that's what the resolution is for.
Yeah, so we're going to give it to staff, and we're going to leave it with them right now.
All right.
Would you like it read? Would you like it read?
Sure.
Sure.
Just so at least the other councillors know what
No,
it
you
is.
can read it in committee hall. We just won't vote on it.
Whereas the Corporation of the City of Sault Ste. Marie has in the previous year began the process of changing all city streetlights to LED streetlights in order to realize the savings available in energy costs through the said change, and whereas there are significant energy savings that can be realized through a conversion to LED lighting of all the existing internal and external light sources within all of our city buildings, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to commission a request for quotation process, including an energy audit to quantify energy and cost savings for this initiative, and a request for quotation process for internal and external lighting retrofits within all city buildings.
So the reason why I was suggesting, Councillor Mano, that we should give this to staff, because they've looked at it, they said, look, we need to talk about it internally, because it is a big project, and we're really getting close to the budget time. So we'll get some feedback from staff on whether they think they could get this in under the wire.
Okay, thank you.
So the other one, Councillor Mano, is, I think, just as big. So I will let the clerk read that, and we can determine how we're going to dispose of it. If you'd like to vote on it, we can vote on it when we come out of committee of the whole, or we could, a staff recommendation, we could refer it to staff, and they could take it away with them and bring back a report.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie does not currently have a policy dictating a permissible level of yearly increases or decreases, as the case may be, to our annual spending budget, and whereas an increase in our spending or budget necessarily results in an increase in our tax rates, and whereas it is paramount that as leaders in our community, we promote fiscal responsibility and foster a culture of restraint on spending, and whereas it is generally considered acceptable that costs do rise and fall each year based on the Consumer Price Index measured rate of inflation, and whereas it is necessary that as leaders in our community, we ensure that our yearly spending or budget only increase or decrease, as the case may be, at the rate of inflation as measured each year by the Consumer Price Index. Whereas there are differing views on the yearly projected rate of inflation as measured in the Consumer Price Index, Construction Price Index, and Municipal Price Index, therefore be it resolved that staff report back to Council and outline a policy that considers a cap of all city expenditures commensurate with the yearly targeted rate of inflation.
So my understanding from staff, Councillor Shoemaker, is that they wouldn't be able to accomplish this, sorry, Councillor Mano, they wouldn't be able to accomplish this prior to this budget. So like this is a broader policy that I think could come to Council after this budget cycle as a motion. Or if you'd like, we could vote on it outside of committee of the whole, and you could task staff with that. They just don't feel in the next short while, amidst putting together the final budget, they're going to be able to accomplish this. Is that a fair assessment, Councillor CEO?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. I think that's a fair assessment. We certainly would be quite willing to and would enjoy actually bringing back a report talking to CPI and talking to how it can be used or targeted for program. Obviously, between now and the 22nd of March, that's going to be very difficult. But outside of the 2016 budget, we certainly are be happy. And I think, as I think I heard it read, if that's approved by Council tonight, we would take that to mean that we would come back at a later date with a report that looks at the CPI as a potential target within the process.
Councillor Christian.
Clarification through you to Councillor Romano, if I could. Are you suggesting that we use CPI projections or trailing indicator? It's a trailing metric. Using last year's CPI or using projected CPI? I think that's important because you're chasing your tail if you're going after last year's CPI.
The intention I had with the motion was that we would be looking at the projected CPI for the for 2016 year. In discussions with our CAO earlier today and Commissioner Schell, there was certain issues raised by staff with respect to other CPIs, being the Construction Price Index and the Municipal Price Index, and how those numbers affect the overall rate of inflation that we deal with in terms of our operational budget. So my position with respect to the motion tonight was first and foremost getting that target rate of inflation for the year. I don't believe that's going to be a difficult number. That's just a matter of looking at those numbers are there. Those are in the Consumer Price Index.
We would get those. We're going to get those in any event.
So my goal is we are talking about constantly in this room, we did last year, we talk about it again for this year, striving for a zero. I'm saying let's strive for the rate of inflation. And instead of striving for it, the goal we have is to hit the rate of inflation. We don't want to be above. This year seems to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.3%, as I understand it. When we take a look at that number and we get what that number is, why can't we have a policy, and I'm suggesting we have a policy that says that's what we're aiming to hit. That's our target, that's what we're going to hit. So it's not so much of we just want to hit it. No, we will hit it. I'm suggesting that's what we should do moving forward. And a lot of the budgets we've seen so far, I look at Commissioner Girardi's budget. He came in at a 0.9% increase. I look at the police services budget today, came in at a 0.9% increase. I'm seeing a lot of these numbers are coming in that range. And we look at what we saw at the beginning today, Commissioner Schell's report to us, we were at, without double checking the paper, I think we were at a 1.9%, if I'm not mistaken, increase. But then because of the the surplus that we applied last year, that's changed that number. So we've got further planning to do. But there's other options still available. We've got reserve funds. We still have ways to hit that target. So let's make it a policy and say from here on out, including 2016, we will hit that rate of inflation as being our tax increase year to year. That's what our rate's going to be.
Hold on.
Not go over that.
In my suggestion, Councillor Mano, so this is a very substantive motion. So we can't do a substantive motion like this on the fly. So like we got this today. It's a really quite a big topic, and it's not, as you're aware, just a matter of even if the budgets are only going up this year 1%, we have the issue of using previous surpluses, which brings us up to 4%. So like there are a lot of dynamics here that staff would want to give us input on if you're going to set a hard target and say we're never going to go, as a policy, we're never going to go above this rate. So I think the appropriate way to deal with this motion is actually to add it to the next council agenda. And like it's seconded by Councillor Nero, so like everybody has notice of it now. And as it stands and written, the clerk will add it to the next council agenda so that everybody has notice of the motion and it can be discussed and debated at that time. And the city staff can offer input. I just don't think we can really vote on this tonight because we need more information to be able to vote on this. So the intention of passing these motions was to support or not support certain recommendations that staff was making. This is on outside of that and setting a city policy. So if you're agreeable and Mr. Councillor Nero's agreeable, we'll put it on the next council agenda as a motion.
Yeah. I think I'm agreeable with that.
Yeah. Councillor Nero? So that leaves Councillor Fada's motion, which will be discussed tonight. So Councillor Fada, you have a motion here. Whereas the 26 proposed budget will be difficult and challenging to reduce to an acceptable level, and whereas there are many Sault Ste. Marie taxpayers that are hurting financially, many laid off or worse, losing their jobs, and whereas it has to be the responsibility of everyone to step up and take responsibility for their own budgets. Now therefore be it resolved that this council vote to reduce the grants to outside agencies for an amount of up to 5% of the requested 2016 budget. So what I would suggest we do is we'll discuss this in council, the committee of the whole. If I think there's support for it, then we can vote on it outside of the committee of the whole. And if there's no support for it, the motion will die. Sure.
Do we require a seconder on that? The sheet I had
Well, we
no
do. Yeah, sorry, we do require a seconder. So,
Okay.
Councillor Shoemaker, are you going to?
Of course
Well,
I'll second that.
so we're in committee of the whole still, so it's still informal. So we have the motion. Does everybody understand the motion? Councillor Fada, do you want to speak to the motion first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. No, this is an item that's come up in the past. It certainly isn't the first time that we've discussed this. I just can't help but look back at a couple of items that we dealt with in the recent past when we talk about what taxpayers are pay for, what they expect from their tax dollars, and we got rid of the 2 weeks that are the 2 free dumps that were available to taxpayers to use in order to bring their discarded materials to the dump site, and we got rid of bus service on Sunday nights. And there's been some feedback. I think some people have all received some feedback on that. And you think about that; those are items that I think are certainly small in nature. And but I guess in the process that we go through when we are asking our departments to look for savings, we come up with those two. And you think about it; those are two things that affect a lot, thousands of taxpayers. a service that I think maybe I'm not necessarily in agreement with, but we did make that decision, and whether we bring it back or not will be another story down the road. But my issue is that we've got to challenge the agencies. What I heard tonight, and I don't want to be specific here, but what I heard tonight lends me to believe that they come here and they give us their numbers, and we have a couple. I noticed the conversations that took place at this during these presentations, and I saw nothing where somebody was really getting down and looking for ways to cut costs, and it just. I just think that we have to make a greater demand from the agencies to look deeper, and it's not coming across that way. Absolutely not. Just about all of them have increases. I don't see anything in terms of the mindset that shows that there's any really hard and fast approach here to try and cut costs. And I think that we have to, I believe that we have to make this request. And I did, specify up to 5%. I don't think that that's an unreasonable amount. If you look at some of the items, I really believe that we have to challenge them to look a little bit deeper. I just don't see that happening, and I certainly got that feeling tonight through the conversations that we had with the various representatives. So I really think that we should look at this. I'm not saying that it has to be 5%, but if it were 5%, we would be looking at a reduction of about 0.27 of a point, which is in dollar amounts to about $276,500. So it's something that I think we should look at. I really believe that we have to make this, I think we all agree that this is something, especially this budget here, we have to be a little bit more demanding, I think, as far as what we expect. And I think that, I can't help but bring this example back up. I mean, there's many people out there right now that have lost their jobs or either laid off perhaps 6, 7, maybe 8 months. They're going to have to find ways to cut costs in their individual households, and they have no choice. But here it seems like numbers show up, we have a conversation, and we're prepared to allow this to take place. I really believe that we have to make this this request, and I think it has to be discussed with each individual agency. So whether it's 5% or whether it's 4%, I just think that has to be discussed. I don't see them taking a serious look at this and looking for ways to cut the costs. And
so, Councillor Fad, as chair, I need some clarification here. Is your motion that we cut the budgets or that we ask the agencies to cut their budgets?
Well, I believe that we should be making that request and expect it to be reduced by 5% or up to 5%.
Okay, so I'm not clear on what your motion is. Is your motion that we want to say we want to cut? Because there's a difference, and if you're taking the first position, in some cases we can't cut people's budgets. They have other avenues. So
I understand that.
Yeah, so like it's not straightforward. So we need to be clear on what you want to accomplish here. If what you want to accomplish is a request from council to all of the agencies we fund externally that they reduce their budgets by, and I think you have to pick a number, right? And that number can be amended by the council, but I think you have to pick a number to move in
the reason I left it somewhat flexible, and can I use 2 examples?
No, but I want to get to the bottom of your motion so we could properly
My
debate
concern is first, and I'm going to give 2 examples. I'm going to give the library, and I'm going to give the Bush Play Museum. I don't think that we're going to tackle both those with the same end result, with the same expectation is what I'm saying. So you're saying to me, should we have a fixed number of 4%?
No. What I'm saying to you is, for the purpose of these folks here who have to vote on your motion, we need to understand what it is. Now, what I'm hearing from you is that you would like council to pass a motion to request that the external funding bodies that we fund reduce their budgets up to 5%. Is that what you're asking?
I'm saying that we'll either decide that it's going to be a fixed number across the board. If you're asking me, do I want a fixed number?
It's your motion, Councillor Fada.
I understand that, but I was trying to leave a little bit of flexibility so that it's not either guilty or not guilty. I mean, If you want me to say that I would expect 5% reduction from every agency, and you want me to bring that request, that the chances of that passing are going to be a lot less than if I said, well, maybe Councillor Butland would go along with a more flexible approach.
So, yeah, I understand that. So and I'm not asking you or wanting anything from you. What I'm trying to determine is get some clarity. So, is your motion that you'd like this council to pass a resolution that asks the agencies to reduce their budgets up to 5%, which is different than asking them to reduce their budgets 5%?
Yeah.
Do you see the distinction?
I understand that. It's just that I feel like it's something that I want to see it pass, but at the same time, I'm trying to leave a little bit of flexibility there. And I don't know where it's going to take us. I don't know whether anybody has any input on that and whether we can say hard and fast 3% across the board. Or...
Okay, Councillor Christian, then Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You actually took my that was my question, because when you're dealing with a resolution like this, you have to have strict guidelines on what you're asking. We're either asking them to, you're asking council to reduce everybody's budget by 5%, or else you're not. And if you're not, it's very ambiguous, because now you start bringing in other sources of funding that they have, the level of funding that they have, how critical is it? There's all kinds of dynamics that you're bringing into it. I mean, a resolution like this is a headline grabber, I get it, but there has to be some practical applications to use this resolution. We'd all like everybody to cut their budgets by 5%. You either sit down with each individual group and go through it with them, or you're asking for council to look for specific cuts. You make the point about bus service and how people are affected. The reality is, if you ask every agency to cut, it's going to affect people. That's what budget cuts do. They affect people. And I don't think that's an argument to make. You're going to affect people that use that particular service. It doesn't matter if we're dealing with the Bush Plane Museum, buses. It's the harsh reality that we're dealing with. So I would appreciate it as a councillor if the resolution clearly stated whether you're asking for a 5% cut or not.
Councillor Nero?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as further clarification, I'd be interested to know, are we talking about the page in our budget that lists outside agencies and grants to others that totals some $29 million? Is that the 5% of that total?
Which would include the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services.
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor.
And the tourist promotion, EDF budget is in there. Is that the whole list we're looking at?
Yeah, there are budgets in there that we actually can't cut. We're not permitted to, but staff would have to give a report back on that. Like the EDC budget, the Innovation Center budget, there's memorandum of understanding, and you have to give a year notice before you could do anything with those budgets. So, and frankly, again, we're a third through the year. So I think it's a really awkward thing to do at this point, although it's something that has to do with our budgeting cycle and how we budget, which is another issue that we'll deal with Councillor Frada. But yeah, we have that list, and I presume that that's what this applies to. And if it does, in some ways, there would be legal consequences to doing that.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't get a response from Shelley regarding that, and she gave me the figures of what we can and cannot tamper with as far as that list on page 28. The amount that we're dealing with is $276,000. $510 or 0.27 of a...
Okay, so if it's not all the agencies...
No, it's not, no.
Okay, well then I think, Councillor Faddy, you have to go away and you have to develop a different motion. You have to develop a motion that specifically identifies the agencies and what you'd like them to accomplish. Because the way your motion currently reads, it would include the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services who can't reduce their budget by 5%. And if that's forced on them by the city, they have a legal mechanism that they can go through to deal with that. So I understand what you want to accomplish, but I don't think your motion's accomplishing it.
Well, you're saying that
budget's not over. Yeah.
You're saying that I didn't specify the agencies.
Well, I understood that the way your motion read, that you were referring to all of them.
Well, originally, I was referring to everything on page 26 that we can actually adjust.
But the city councilors don't know which those agencies are. Yeah. So what I'm saying, Councillor Fada, is that what we should do is you should work this through and then bring back a specific motion to city council, including the agencies and including what you're looking for the percentage range. And you can do that prior to our March 22nd meeting. You could still do it in this budget cycle. But right now, my sense of it is, and I understand why, city council doesn't know what they're voting on. And I'm not clear as the chair what city council is voting on. So I think the motion is frankly ambiguous and really not, it can't proceed tonight, Councillor Fada.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Let's use the library board, or the library as an example, okay? They've come forward with their financials, and we looked at what they presented. We're saying we didn't vote on that yet.
Did it?
Okay. We haven't voted on that yet.
No, we
so
haven't.
it's not finalized. What are they going to present that's going to be different from what they presented tonight? I'm just trying to get an idea here.
Nothing.
Nothing. So we are basically going to vote on what was presented tonight.
That is what will be in the budget as their request. If you do not want to fund them to that degree, you can move a motion to decrease that funding.
So we're going to be able to approach it case by case.
But in that case, I think the library board has Commissioner Shell, does the library board have a mechanism, a funding mechanism?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or actually through you, Mr. Mayor. It's getting late. The library board presents their budget to council, and council has to approve their budget.
Okay. So in that specific respect, if you wanted to move to decrease their budget, then that would be a motion that would be clear to council. You could move that motion. If it's seconded, we debate it and vote on it.
Okay. Then I will have to present it case by case then.
Yes, you would.
Okay.
Yeah. And you will be permitted to do that in this budget cycle because you've raised the issue and we're still in the budget cycle. So you've got quite a bit of time here to put those together, and you should do that and bring them back, and we'll go through them. Yes, Councillor Turco.
Thank you. And further to that, I think through you, we need to know, though, what effect it would have on specific agencies, this 5% or 4%. We just heard from the art gallery, anything less than what they're getting, even what they're getting now is at best futile. Anything less than that, they would have to close their doors. So we need to hear that from the agencies before I'm prepared to vote on it, Mr. Mayor.
Well, if you weren't satisfied with the information you received, Councillor Turco, you could vote against it.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I understand that. Okay, Council, so that brings us to the end of this budget session. I think we'll pass it on to Madam Clerk, and she could read the motion to arise from Committee of the Whole.
The motion by Councillor Shoemaker and Turco resolved that the Committee of the Whole Council now rise and report on the matter referred to it by City Council 2016 budget deliberations.
All in favor? Carried.
And Councillor Turco asked that I separate out the motion so that the police budget is separate as he has a conflict. So a motion by Councillors Huppinen and Nero resolved that the Committee of the Whole Council recommend approval of the police budget to the final budget deliberation meeting.
All in favor? Carried.
And a motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Turco resolved that the Committee of the Whole Council recommend approval of the Library, Art Gallery of Algoma Sault Ste. Marie Museum, Canadian Bush Plain Heritage Centre, and agencies requesting grants budgets to the final budget deliberation meeting.
All in favor? Carried.
And a motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Nero that this council now adjourn.
All in favor?